All right. So calling the March 18th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting to order. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I believe we don't have any minutes to approve. Is that correct?
We do not, but allow me to do roll call real fast.
Nope.
Commissioner Takashi?
Here.
Commissioner Fong?
Present.
Commissioner Moore?
Here.
Vice Chair Saxena?
Here.
Chairperson Wong?
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Excellent. Very cool. All right. Approval of minutes. How are we doing on minutes? There are no minutes? All right. We're clear on minutes. I believe there's no postponements. Do we have any oral communications?
There were some written comments submitted. I'll just put.
Push to mute.
Some written comments were submitted, and I believe those are now on the record.
All right, cool. Okay. Bobby Trung, please come to the podium.
Good evening. I just want to take this time to bring to your attention a defect that I have found in the code that has to do with the definition of lot coverage in section 19.08.030. As it's written, for lot coverage, there are two definitions that are provided. One that applies to single-family residential uses and another that applies to all other uses. And in the one that applies to single-family residential uses, there is a specific recitation in there that says sheds are included in lot coverage. Then in the other definition that applies to all other uses, there is no such recitation. And so it gives, when you read the two together, it gives a very distinct impression that for the other uses, sheds don't count towards lot coverage. Now, I've talked to Tim Borland and Artie when she was still working with the city on this point, and they said the official position of the city is that sheds do count towards lot coverage, even for the other uses, but they admit that the way the code is written right now, it makes that position very difficult to logically defend. And so I think they would be up for changing this to make that to make it more clear. And so I would highly suggest that that be done. But while we're looking at that, since we're looking at maybe changing the definition of lot coverage, I do have an additional suggestion of something that might be changed there to better serve the needs of property owners. And to elaborate on that, as you all know, for R3 lots, which is multi-unit residential, there is a 40% limit on lot coverage. And developers know this, so by the time they develop a lot and the property owner buys it, all the lot coverage has already been used up. And this makes it very difficult because, we own a fourplex. We want to have some sort of a storage shed so that we can store the things that we use to take care of the property. You think about all the things that you use to take care of your home. That's kind of the stuff that we need: lawnmower, gardening tools, power tools, all that stuff. But as of right now, we have absolutely no lot coverage whatsoever to have any type of storage shed. And so my suggestion is that if we could update the definition of lot coverage so that for other uses, there's no 40% limit on single-family residential uses, but that's only for R3s. And so that's where this need is actually more pressing for R3s. So my suggestion is to allow one shed no greater than 120 square feet to be excluded from lot coverage for R3 lots. And I chose 120 square feet because that's the size of sheds that the city has already determined to be small enough that no building permit is needed. So obviously a decision's already been made that that's small enough to be somewhat insignificant. And so that's the change that I would suggest be implemented. And I chose this. And I was very careful in making this suggestion because I wanted to strike a perfect balance between the needs of the property owner to have some place for storage, but also the needs of the city to not let a lot be overly developed. And so I think this is a very small amount of additional coverage.
Thank you for the comments. I believe you also spoke at the city council meeting last week, I believe?
I
Okay,
did.
just wanted
I
to
did,
make
and I
that-
also spoke at their agenda, the work program setting session that they had on one of the Saturdays. And I think this is going to be put on their agenda to vote as to whether to include it in the work program. And I'm speaking here so that I can at least introduce you to the topic so that if they come back and ask you about it, you're familiar with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it possible to add one little comment?
Sure, we'll give you that time. Fill out a card, too.
Hi there, I'm Robin Trong. 120, I will. I'll fill out a
You can do it
card.
afterwards. Do it afterwards.
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know 120 feet is the size of a
Tough shed.
tough shed.
Yeah, it's a
So
tough shed
that,
size.
so you all have a visual idea.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we get there. Jennifer Griffin?
Good evening, Planning Commission. It's on a Monday night. This is unusual, but that's okay. Hi, I'm Jennifer Griffin, and I thought I would bring up an item which maybe you guys, it's something that I've been concerned about for a very long period of time, and you guys might be able to do something about it. If you're looking at trying to drive over Highway 17, for whatever reasons, you're commuting, you're going to go see relatives, you're going to the beach on the weekend or during the week, that road has outgrown the load of traffic on it. There are horrendous accidents that have been happening during the rainy season. I drive over there 1 to 2 times a week. I cannot begin to tell you the number of times. I go 40 miles an hour in the slow lane. A lot of other people don't. I have seen in the last month, one day I think I saw 4 accidents coming and going to Santa Cruz. There was someone sitting, their car was on the median. I think last Saturday, the day that it was so rainy, 2 weeks ago, I did not drive to Santa Cruz, but every time I turned on the car radio, there were accidents northbound, southbound. They had to close both lanes. I believe that it's high time that the Santa Clara County starts working with Santa Cruz County to upgrade and fix the issues from Los Gatos over to Scotts Valley. On Thanksgiving of last year, we were met with a wrong-way driver. We were coming back from Santa Cruz, going to Scotts Valley, and there was a driver that got on in Scotts Valley going southbound, and we were going northbound. It is a miracle that they caught him 200 feet from when he came on, but he'd already hit 3 cars. And we, thank God, were about a quarter mile back in a backup, but the good Scotts Valley people had already gotten off the road and gone around and were getting back onto 17 because they know their back roads. That road is becoming a complete liability. I consider the counties of Santa Cruz and Santa Clara County need to work together to fix Big Moody Curve, Laurel Glen, Scotts Valley, Los Gatos. I don't even know how many lives have been lost on that road, and thank God there's a median, because when I was in high school, we lost 3 members of a family from my high school. Our drum major was killed in an ongoing accident. My husband lost people from Monte Vista High School about the same time. Yes, it's gotten safer, but it is time that we did something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Janet Van Zoren. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm assuming that this is the oral input for the prioritization process you're working on tonight. Is that correct?
It's just general oral communications. We can't add items to the agenda, but we'd love to hear your opinion.
Actually, we haven't actually got to that agenda item yet.
Yeah.
So if you want to give input on that when we get to it,
Yes.
come back then.
Thank you.
Yeah, which will be next. Yeah, we can do that in the next round.
Thanks.
Okay. I believe that's it for oral communications. And let's move on to any written communications. Okay, we've got none of those. Consent calendar, I believe there's none. And
I'm sorry, we actually did get one written
we did one
communication.
written? Okay,
Yes,
let's
yeah.
grab that one. I think it's not in the packet.
I can provide a copy.
Okay. We don't need to read that, so we should be okay.
That's correct. I can make sure it's included in the
Available in
record.
the agenda packet. Okay. So let's go back to our old business here. What's the item here. First of all, I want to thank the city staff. I want to thank the city attorney and the other city council members before we get there.
On the written communications, it's okay that we don't see that if it's relative to the agenda item?
You should hopefully have all received a copy of it ahead
Okay.
of time, and if you did not, if it's not in your inbox, then it
It's
will be
in the
included
inbox?
be in the inbox.
in the online packet.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
let's make sure it's in everyone's inbox. Let's go check it if you haven't seen it, but I believe it should be there. I thought I saw that. Thank you. So, yeah, so I wanted to thank the city staff and as well as the city attorney and all the fellow commissioners here for meeting on a special Monday to do this. Part of the reason for doing this is because we are sending work programs and suggestions from our end to City Council for their prioritization so that we can adequately staff the Planning Commission for projects. They may be working on projects that we've been hearing from both community, business, residents, and other folks. So that's why we're here today, and I just wanted to thank everyone for doing that and meeting on this special night for this. So we've got a list of agenda items here. They've been captured from the previous meeting, and we have to sit and spend some time here as a team to develop a process to prioritize this. So I'd love to hear other ideas from everyone else. And we also have a lot of duplicates on that list, so maybe there's a way we can figure out a way to consolidate them. And then I believe our job tonight is to figure out a way to prioritize this. So any suggestions from my fellow commissioners?
Well, so yeah, we did have many duplicates. So I think one effort would be go through and consolidate or purge those items. And then in terms of prioritizing, it's difficult to have a discussion on that many items. So one way to do it, I'm not sure that it necessarily will work, but one way to do it is that we rank each of them in numerical order, either ascending or descending, and then see where the pattern arrives from that. I happened last week to serve as a judge for the there's a Synopsis Science Fair, and we actually used that mechanism. Surprisingly, none of us thought it was going to work, and it actually did. So,
no, it does. It does. Being a Science Talent Search alumni, I believe that's how it works. So, but yes. Okay, so let's go through each one and see where we can actually create some kind of roll-ups for some things. Some are obvious duplicates, so maybe we can look at them and number them, not in a prioritization of how we believe, just for the purposes of making it easy. So I believe we got something like 32 items. So if anyone sees any duplicates, let's put them together, and that might actually start the first list.
sure. Item 1 shows here as a comparative study for standards for mixed-use development. That actually would be identical to, I believe, the comments in 22 and 31. So that would be high-density residential guidelines and mixed-use project standards are probably the same thing. So,
I disagree with that because you've got parkland and green space mentioned in here, and if anything, I would say that this, yeah, I would not be combining those.
well, I mean, you know, we
in
could
that way.
rewrite it as well. But I don't think that there's anything.
Yeah, I think I would probably go with something a little bit easier, like the night skies, dark skies agenda, and combine that one, because that's a little simpler to start with, and I think we have that one repeating.
Yes, 13 and 23.
13 and 23. 13 and 23, okay. Let's combine 13 and 23. Let's just get rid of 23, make it easier and leave it as 13. Doesn't seem there's any difference here. Okay.
13, that's bird safe design guide.
Yeah.
So 23, and which is the second one you mentioned?
13, I believe. Oh, not
No,
13, sorry.
yeah.
I saw the wrong one here.
So 13 is review dark sky policy, begins like that, and 23 is the one that begins bird safe. Yeah,
Eight.
bird safe.
8. 8 is what we're looking at.
Yeah,
right?
8.
Sorry. For the record, it's number 8 and number 23. I apologize. So I
Oh, yeah, yeah.
set you off in the wrong
That's
direction.
right. That's me. Yeah,
So, all right, so we got that.
yeah.
So 8, 13. Okay, cool. Any other things that look similar? Now, I originally looked at this on my own, and I realized that there are a couple types here, right? There's things that are code cleanup. There's things that are study sessions. Some things are things that we want to look at proactively. Some things are process efficiency. Maybe there's other categories, but I was trying to figure out ways to kind of categorize this to help us bring other categories together. Because, for example, we could potentially take code cleanup and say, there's these items that need to be cleaned up in the municipal code. We should find funding for the city staff to be able to get to that. And items number, I'm making them up, X, number X, Y, Z, and P are all related, and maybe we can just roll that up into one package or something like that. So that may be a suggestion out there as well.
Can we do that after we've gotten rid of the duplications? Like we have 18 for CASA, and we have CASA showing up on number 12.
Yes.
Let's roll up 12 and 18. Let's do that.
And I believe that's also true for 6, which is solar, and 29, which is also
Got
solar
it. Yep, that's
standards.
correct. 6 and 29. I'm used to
What
whiteboards.
about number 5, the zero net energy incentives? Is it similar?
No, that's something different.
Is that similar to solar standards? Nope. Okay.
No,
Got it.
it's electrification.
It seems like 15 study session on housing diversity maybe goes with 19. It might actually go with a few things, but can we look at that?
So I would agree, although I think that that's actually out of the scope of the Planning Commission. That's the BMR plan is normally an effort of the Housing Commission. So I would actually suggest we remove that. Or, both.
So you're saying to push the housing diversity study session to the Housing Commission instead?
That they normally would be the body that reviews the affordable housing policy or the BMR policy.
Okay, so they just had their work session on Thursday, and I did take a snapshot of it. I can take a look and see if they got that on there.
That's
Or
actually
can
also
City Council push it down
yeah.
to them?
That's actually also an outstanding issue that City Council is looking at. Had already called for a revision on the affordable housing policy because of the Palmer change. Can't remember the name of it. The one that the Palmer fixed law hasn't actually been written into the affordable housing policy yet. So that is something that went to staff, which would be I can't remember her name now.
PU?
Yeah.
I believe it's PU.
Yeah.
Housing planner? Carrie
Yeah,
Heisler?
Carrie. Yeah, so that would have went to Carrie, and we'll come back to the Housing Commission and then to the council for approval.
So you're saying it's out of our jurisdiction?
I think that it is. I don't know whether we have reviewed that as it was coming back in the past, but there's nothing interrelated to the municipal code, or the general plan.
I have the whole list from the Housing Commission, and they're going to be bringing their list tomorrow to City Council. I could read this to you if you want to hear what they've got.
Yeah, let's hear what they have just in case.
Okay.
And if not, we can send it to them as well.
Okay, so we can put this up for everyone to see. This is a copy of their whiteboard. I don't know. Do we have a mic? Well, if we see it, then I'll be able to look at it. Okay, and I'll try to see if that works.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Flip it around
Flip it.
to your left.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay. A little hard to read. Can that be focused a little bit? Or if maybe if you pull it down on the page.
Oh, look at that.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Is that better? Does someone have better eyes than I do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow, look at that. Now we're talking.
Okay, so you have homelessness resources. They grouped it into A, B, and C, and then they added new legislation at the end, which was, that's me scrolling that on at the bottom. So these notes are by Carrie, their staff liaison. So we have homelessness resources for food and bathing, and something to address the homeless De Anza students. Next, list of affordable housing locations, funding sources for affordable housing projects. Also in A, you have ADUs, and they mentioned De Anza students, parking requirements, and garage conversions. And then for B, presentations from community groups like VTA. The regional pooling of BMR funds, study on speculative housing, whether you have vacant or investor homes, and discuss, I cannot recall, single family zoning, there we go, and the missing middle types of housing, and increasing the housing stock, so possibly that's what we're talking about here. And C, oversee the status of affordable housing. Status, they meant condition. Needing maintenance types of things. Overview of housing and human services, grant programs, and mid-year reports, and project updates for Valco, Marina, Hamptons, and the Oaks. And they added on the board new legislation, which is all the 200 housing bills, essentially, that are out there.
Okay. I believe that's going in the Housing Committee, so we can remove any of the Housing Committee-related items on this list. And if that's, I think there's another one down here. 30 as well, we can remove as well. BMR standard on housing designs, that wouldn't hit us, or would that hit us? I don't think so.
I wasn't sure what that one was, but.
I think it's related to that, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so which ones did we get to take off for that?
So at the moment, 30 is off, and at the moment, I think it was 15 and 19. So anything with missed?
Also 29, I believe.
Yes.
And 20.
Solar standard 29 merged into number 6.
Oh, you mean total taking off? Yes, correct. I was just saying for the housing pieces, yes. Okay. Anything else?
Well, there are two items related to, so one item, item 10, actually was a comment which was kind of turned into a comment that I made, which kind of turned into a recommendation. So I actually believe that 10 and 16 are kind of the same thing. So these are both discussions related to application time limits. And I actually would suggest that we remove those as well. I mean, I think that the point that I was trying to make there was that, you know, when somebody puts an application, you know, when a project comes here, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to make a proposal to build. So, you know, if they gain an entitlement and don't build it, you know, because they were, you know, given a time limit and don't start building, that's really, you know, the penalty is not, it's not something that the city has an opportunity to do. I mean, you know, we will bump into this one again. You know, there are development agreements that vest rights. You know, this is a vested right for those approvals. So I'm not really sure there's anything to talk about.
If I could add to that one comment that you just made, Commissioner Fong, I believe the City Council at their goal setting had identified a development accountability, which in broad strokes anticipates a method to analyze limitation of implementation timeline for entitled projects. So these two items perhaps can go into that. It's already been identified for council.
So yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think that the interesting you know, often this is discussed in a retroactive way, which is not something that I think is appropriate for, you know, I mean, I just don't think there's actually a legal discussion there. But, you know, of course, in any future plan, having that metric added, I mean, yeah, that's
I guess my point is that if it's already proposed by City Council in the WIL program, that we don't necessarily need a 10 or 16 if it's already proposed by City Council. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I would like to leave that there because as the policymaking body here, for us to determine what they should be proactively, what we would like to see in those developer agreements, to put some kind of policy around it. And part of the reason for that is because one of the reasons for some of the housing shortage we have at the moment is a lot of these agreements have been signed and nothing's been built. And we didn't have those in the current agreements. And so this may help us set that policy. So if there's any...
Yeah, actually,
you can vote a lower priority if you don't like it, but that's why.
The chair here, I think this is important enough, given where the city's future lies, to us to have a deep discussion. So I'm not fully aware of what the city council has approved, but I would recommend that we keep it on the agenda and they can decide to deprioritize or merge it if they already have on it.
So I don't have a problem with that if it is, you know, if it's sufficiently clear that it is forward-looking. You know, there were long entitlements given to the Hamptons and DeFalco, and there isn't anything you can do about that. I mean, it's a contract. So, you know, what that means is on the next one, that you might ask, you know, to stage that in a different way.
Well, I don't have immediate access to the actual contracts which were signed with the different allocations, so I'm not sure whether that it's even relevant. But I think we probably should leave that decision to the council, whether it needs to be retroactive or it needs to be forward-looking. I'm sure the agreements which the developer signed safeguarded their rights, given the agreement which was stuck there. But I would rather err on the side being less prescriptive and keeping it open-ended than just telling them what they and they should not be doing.
Okay, any other comments on that?
I don't know whether the attorney wants to comment on this. You know, there's an interesting question here about the mechanism through which the development agreement is drafted. That's actually where this discussion happens. That has not been traditionally an effort of the Planning Commission.
I have no comment about this at this time. I appreciate the discussion. I think it should be part of the record, yeah.
Okay. I mean...
and actually, if I remember, when I look at number 10, I think the violation of the conditional approval, I'm not sure whether it's capturing everything, but my concern more was around how different components of mixed use are, when they're mixed and matched, that all of them, it shouldn't happen that the developer gets a waiver on one aspect of it simply because the circumstances make it less profitable compared to doing something else. And the fact that mixed use, especially which includes exceptions and so and other things, and changes to the general plan, if that's the case, then they all should be viewed as a whole, and it shouldn't be, the concessions made should not become something which are then taken away simply because it makes more economic sense. So the economic incentive to adapt and ask for a change in the plan should be removed, and that requires some understanding of the financial implications of each, and accordingly some framework for incentivizing the developer from doing that. So whether that's the intent of what I had in mind.
I have a question, and is a development agreement a project under CEQA?
Yeah, it's for the attorney, I guess.
Generally, yes, although this is a question that's subject to case law.
So in the specific case you raise about exceptions, those are actually state law. So there is no ability for the council or the Planning Commission to comment or block that. You know, if the locality sets a standard of of inclusionary affordable housing, 15% for us right now, then they have earned the exception granted by the state. And there isn't any way you can, there isn't anything the city can do to not do that, with the exception of what was done with Tier 2 in the Valco specific plan.
I think we should probably refrain from talking about the specific projects here and think about what policy is going forward. But I think these policies are also going to be applicable, it's going to be applicable, I mean, either way going forward. Some might apply it later, I mean, but that's not for us at the moment. I think that's for council's going to decide.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I don't have any specific project or anything in mind when I think about it. I think it more that, hey, as a city, if we are going to be negotiating agreements with developers which require some change from the original general plan or some extra allocation, there needs to be a framework to make sure that the whole project gets executed and it doesn't become like a candy store where the developer can pick and choose which candy they want to eat. That's all.
Right, your general concern, though, is a change that makes the project more profitable. That's a change after the fact. That potentially that was the intention at the very beginning, was to make a change somewhere in the middle of the project to maximize economic return for the project?
Well, I wouldn't want to speculate on why the developer is doing it. Clearly, they have their incentives and goals. But as a city, we need to make sure that if we are funding 5 different components of, or if we are approving 5 different components, and some of them obviously are going to be more profitable, some are going to be less, and economic conditions which might change after 5 years, 6 years. It shouldn't become a pick and choose and take what you like.
Right.
But it should be, this is the whole agreement. We feel it is fair. You agree it's fair. Let's stick to it.
Right.
And
but you really want to focus on the main attributes, like for example, in a mixed use, just the units and the retail floor space and the office floor space as kind of the main elements of not necessarily changing. Just
the main elements, or if we have some special
and affordable housing,
affordable, senior, disabled access. So there are different elements which will have different economic impact for the developer.
Right.
And if you're treating something as a whole, then it should also. And the other aspect here is many times a developer would carve out different parts simply for building different companies. They might have a separate company or a separate entity for building the office, which is very different from the entity which builds the condo or maintains the condo and so on. And it shouldn't happen that because they are separate entities, the responsibility for building the whole gets dissipated, and we are simply left with the option of either we're doing it or we're not. What do you want? And then we say, well, okay, go ahead and do whatever you want.
Right,
and
but generally, the city council and staff have the power to deny a change, correct? I mean, that's right.
I think the whole point is not to incentivize the developer to come and ask for those exceptions going forward, because nobody wants an empty shell or a half-built complex. And we will always err on the side, okay, well, if you can't do this, then just do it. So if we can put in checks and balances in the system to make sure that the incentive for doing that is minimized, I think that will help in the developers sticking to what they originally agreed to.
Sure. Okay.
But at the end of the day, the things that I think you're identifying as objectionable are state law. They're state incentives, so they can't be overridden by the city.
I'm sure there are state incentives for certain exceptions we grant, but there are a lot of other stuff which gets negotiated between the developer and so on. And if it is a state law, we can't change anything, well and good. But I don't think the state laws will cover all the exceptions and incentives which we give to the developer. So it doesn't hurt to put something, or for us, the city, to think about how to create a structure where the interests of everybody are guarded. Because I know that if I take a car loan and I don't pay it back, the repo guy comes and takes my car. People lose their houses and so on. And that's because certain part of the agreement was broken. And right now, we don't have any, I don't think we have clear guidelines on how to establish a structure where the incentives are aligned and the developer doesn't have incentives to go back and pick and choose what they want to build after a project as a whole has been approved.
But if they do that, then they have to come back for approval, and that's discretionary approval. This actually comes down. This is at the core of how of how the projects work here. You know, there's a development agreement that's negotiated. That has typically been something that's done by staff in conjunction with the, in conjunction with the city attorney's office or a legal consultant. If, and then you can have a discretionary approval. And if you want to change what it is that you want to build, you'll have to come back and get another approval. So the ultimate, there's kind of the ultimate penalty is, the developers are not coming here for the fun of having hearings. They're trying to actually build something. And if they don't build exactly what was laid out in the development agreement, then they won't, they won't build their project.
I guess my goal is to cut down on a whole bunch of this discretionary stuff which happens in cities, because given a project is 70% complete, the leverage with the city has to force a developer to do something is limited, and it's not. I would rather have the disincentives be a part of the contract rather than being left to this discretionary power down the line. That's my view.
I'm just going to add that there may have been projects in the past in the city where the level of discretion led to maybe dozens, hundreds of exceptions and violations that were made, and maybe that's might be what we're talking about here.
Is there an example of that you can think of?
I actually have one, but I'm not going to call it out at the moment. So,
okay, because I actually don't think that that's true. If you either follow the development agreement or the agreement that has been the approval that you've been given, or you don't get an occupancy permit. And
I think sometimes staff may have more leverage to make exceptions as needed, and I think that's kind of what is being addressed here at the moment. So,
can we get staff to weigh in on that?
Poor guy, poor Ben. Got you on this. So.
I'm not aware of any staff level, I guess, determinations or abilities to make exceptions. I think the code spells out sort of criteria and process you have to go forth to make those arguments, and usually it is through some sort of public meeting process, whether it's administrative meeting or a planning commission or city council.
All right. So, I mean, is this here because there's a strong feeling and/or suspicion that, I mean, this is kind of what I heard, that the city's making deals behind closed doors with developers in order for the projects to get done? Just, I mean, that's kind of...
This is here for looking forward and to address some of the issues in the past that I think there's a belief that some of these exceptions were made. Some of those individuals may no longer be with the city at the moment, and some of those individuals may be working for corporations that are in the Cupertino area. But just to be specific, I think it's proactive as a planning commission for us to think through these, and I think that's why it's there. And if we don't like it, we just vote it down. I mean, or we just deprioritize it. But I want to move on to other items. But I think that's why it's
okay.
on there.
Yeah, I was just trying to make sure I understand the intent and.
Okay, I wasn't really sure where this was heading when it started, so it ended up somewhere surprising. So I thought this was to address the fact that we have a lot of housing that's been approved and that it hasn't been built, and that's what I thought this was about. And it was, how can we keep that from happening in the future? Because that was one part of it, and then I also mistakenly thought this had something to do with perhaps some people wanting to renegotiate the fact that we look at community benefits associated with a project, and you can end up with a community benefit that is really nothing to do with the project, and you're trying to weigh, is this project on its own merits good, and what if we give you this much money for this other thing over here that has nothing to do with this project or tangentially does. So I saw this as something different, but I caught on. Thanks.
Are there any other clarifications on these items list that people may want to go through? And you can still stay here if you want.
I think we do need to stay on this one. So, if there's a concern, the council, the new council has expressed a concern that entitlements were given, long-term entitlements were given on a number of projects, which haven't been built yet, right? But they are completely within. That was a discretionary approval with a very concrete, ironclad, development agreements on these, attached to these. They're in compliance with those agreements. And if they want in the future, if you want the time frame for a project to, to pull permits to be 5 years instead of 10, then that's just, they need to make that development agreement. And, or not approve the one that has, that has 10 years of, time in it. They have a right. There was actually a benefit, I don't know, in the example of the Hamptons, there was a benefit there. They received a long-term approval term in exchange for some of the concessions that were made to the city in the project.
I think Commissioner Fung, you're saying that the council will address that in future developer agreements.
Absolutely. So if there's a point here about talking about what is the form in which that might look, I think that there's possibly some point here. I think that it sits very far away from the way in which projects are typically approved here.
I agree that it is that the business as usual probably has left something to desire. Commissioner Fung, what I would like to see is some framework where when large projects, especially large projects, are approved, they have some structure to disincentivize cherry picking of different parts of the project. And it is meant to make sure that the whole project happens, the projects happen after a lot of scrutiny, a lot of discussion, a lot of input, and what we approve is based on the collective wisdom of a lot of people. And I want to make sure that there are no financial incentives for the developer to walk away from that and ask for changes, and to put in those disincentives as a matter of policy in those contracts.
I mean, hypothetically, we might be missing some senior housing that should have been somewhere. We might be missing some parklands. We could be missing, more office space. It could be more, retail, whatever it is. I think that's
those were all negotiated, right? Those were negotiated. There was an approval. There was an approval, for instance, at Main Street. There was an approval that had senior housing. When that turned out to not be viable, that came back for discretionary approval. And the council could easily have said, no, we won't do it unless it was what we wanted. But they looked at that, did it on balance, and said, hey, this is the way we want to move forward. In particular, that was actually that particular section was done for a very specific reason that had to do with not cherry picking which things got built. The request, the change in the style of housing that was provided was a balance to a request to phase that project and not complete the residential section, right? And the council's will at that time was, we want the whole thing to get built at once. What would you build that will make that happen, right? So that there was an approved project that had one form. There was a request for a change which required a discretionary discussion and a discretionary approval.
David, I'm sure the council did what they felt was the most appropriate given the choices the developer offered them. It's just that if we, from the beginning, make it structure our agreements in a manner where the incentive for the developer to ask for those changes is reduced, we are much more likely to not have to deal with those. I'm not 100% sure, but in that case, I think the developer said that they couldn't find somebody to finance the senior housing. To me, that looks like a case where they could find people to finance the offices and other parts, but just not the senior housing. And to me, that's something which should have been thought about and talked about when the project was approved, not when it is 70% or 60% or 80% built.
So, Commissioner Saxena, you're looking for a more proactive and more prescriptive guidance? Is that what you're asking for?
Yes, that our agreements, and perhaps we should benchmark. We could see what Palo Alto does, because of which they're able to impose fines on developers who don't follow the agreement. That's something to study. But as a city, our goal should be to reduce incentives for developers, the economic incentives for developers, and to make sure that down the line discretionary changes are minimized, because the initial project, which goes through so much of scrutiny, so much of investment, and so much of effort, the whole thought process and the conviction and the reasons behind of approval of that fade away if we start using those discretionary, approving those discretionary requests for doing things.
Go ahead. So I have to touch on this one again. In Palo Alto, if you're referring to the Edgewood Plaza, there was a violation of what they believe to be the conditional use permit, right? We have all those same controls present here. You know, so Palo Alto fined the developer in that case, and ultimately that was thrown out by the court, right? It's not a violation. So, you know, I think that the things that you're looking for exist. There's definitely a question. You know, if there's a question here of what is the form of things in which we try to ensure those deals. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a discussion there. There's input to be given to the team that's developing the approval, the approval resolution or the development agreement. But I don't think that I don't think we're deficient in the things that we're doing, or in the pain level in the event that these are not simple changes that are being made, you know, at a kind of staff discretionary level. These are major things. People know about them because, you know, we had hearings for them.
I'm going to suggest that we move on. I think we can go deeper on these issues should they be prioritized by the council and brought back to us. So let's do that. If there are other items here that should be combined, let's do that, and then we can get to prioritization.
Okay, just to clarify, we are keeping 16 and 10, and they are grouped together. We are not removing them from the list.
Yes, I would like to keep 10 on the list.
Would you like to combine 10 with 16, just to make sure, just to be clear?
Yes. They are a whole part of how the agreements are structured.
Okay.
And we should, the sub-bullets of that.
Okay. I got a question for staff. So a question on general plan cleanup and municipal code cleanup. I just want to know if is that too broad of a list in general? Does it need to be more specific to secure any kind of funding to do that, or to provide the work sessions for that?
I think broad description is maybe better, because then you actually covers a lot. If you're more prescriptive, you may be limited to exactly how you spell it out, but that may be exactly your intent. So really, it's up to the commission how you wish to craft your language. No,
good to know, because I think the goal here today is to give council like 10 items to look at and prioritize from us. So,
just to clarify, those would be on the normal. Maintaining a list of general plan updates and changes, and the same thing for municipal plan. That is a standard part of the work that the staff is doing.
I think it's an ongoing wish list. When the department has sufficient resources, yes.
Right. So I think just as a note, for instance, in oral communication, we had a comment about the floor area ratio, right? And that, I think it's a matter of course, that actually has now entered onto the list of things that will get consideration, you know, at such a time when those parts of the code are touched in the future.
I think the idea with the general plan cleanup was hopefully that each commission would take their portion, that, for instance, housing, would take their portion and come up with suggestions, read through the general plan, come up with suggestions for it, and then we would have an outside company that would also be looking at our general plan and be making some adjustments that way.
Yes, I think it sounds like the commission is sort of struggling with combining these items together. I don't know if necessarily is necessary to combine all 32 items into 10. I think there's enough differences or feelings for any of these 32 items. You can go and prioritize all of them, and we'll present that to City Council for their consideration. Right? Some of these, it could merge into items that are already included in your work program, or not.
So I think 11 and 5 might fit together.
Let's take a look at that. Proactive planning, study on zero net, and
Yeah, when I made the zero net suggestion, it was probably something a little different than that, but that's, I don't think there's a problem with combining them.
okay. And we don't have to combine to 10 items. I just
Yeah.
wanted to at
No,
least
I-
reduce the 32 we had or whatever we had.
So, again, maybe another question to staff. The kind of review of the general plan that Commissioner Moore just mentioned would normally be the kind of undertaking that was done from 2012 to 2014, right? So must be a mechanism through which the council decides to start a major general plan revision.
I think the intent of this current discussion about reviewing a general plan, evaluate a general plan, whether it's looking at standards or zoning or design guidelines, or to modify zoning requirements for FAR or lot coverage or sheds, we're looking at as grouped into all one general plan, unless council at the meeting decides that it wants to separate all of that. That effort as a whole requires way more resources than the department has. So, and that's why it would end up on the list as a work program item.
Right, so what's the intent, general plan cleanup or general plan amendment?
I think there's probably both in that intent,
So
but I guess
we need to be specific here, because they're
I do.
two vastly
They're two vastly
different
different.
elements.
yeah,
So-
I'm starting to see that as well. So,
Well-
and I believe that some of the municipal code cleanup probably should have happened, but I guess it might not have happened because we might not have brought it to anyone's attention. So maybe if these things are generically happening anyways, maybe we should just call it the one or two items that we think really should be prioritized.
Well, it may be that the timeline for a general plan amendment is so long that this is the right time to start talking about it, just because it's going to take a very long time getting a company and getting everybody on board for what the goal is.
I just have a process question. If somebody could give me a 30-second on how amendment and a cleanup are different. I guess a cleanup would also require some change in the code or the plan, so.
Well, generally, my interpretation is cleanup is there's an inconsistency that's minor, that does not impact the main elements of the general plan, right? So cleanup meaning, okay, there are typos here, or there's this, or there's that. Nothing that changes the structure of the document in any way, shape, or form, versus an amendment is, hey, this was going to be, we're going to right? Just big elements that change what we want the city to look like in the future. So big project versus taking care of inconsistencies and cleanup, right? So
Does cleanup have to go back to the state as well? If we do cleanups, just a process question? Okay, but a general plan amendment would actually.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure that's the severity, just so everyone understands that.
So if you take the parkland requirement as an example, you've got that in the general plan and in the municipal code in a couple of places. So some of that is you want to say what parkland is, what you're going to accept as parkland. Is it something on the ground or on a roof, something like that? So there you're actually overlapping into both documents that you're going to need some work on. And it might seem insignificant, but to some developers and people, this is a very significant thing to discuss.
Okay, so Commissioner Moore, you'd like to keep that separate then, it sounds like, these items, because it sounds like what we have is we have to do general plan stuff anyways, that's kind of our charter, and there's things in the municipal code that might need to be fixed, so we're basically just calling out specific items that may be, we want to prioritize to council's attention. Right? Does that sound right to everybody here? Maybe not.
I agree in concept with what you're saying. However, I don't know that that's the appropriate role. But
well, we have a chance to be a little bit more proactive if we want to. We can be more passive. I think, but I think if you look at the city council's number one objective, I believe it was to relook at the general plan and look at objective standards. So we have a chance to shape that right now, and maybe we can do some things proactively and hopefully get staff funded appropriately as well. Okay, any other questions on here before have we anything else we need to eliminate and duplicate here?
Yep, we need to remove number 17. The way in which this is the question around VALCO hearings. I don't think there's, again, for legal reasons, I don't think there's anything to study there. And again, right, and this was reactive to public comment, which had talked about, wanting to make a change. So there is an approved specific plan today. If it becomes unapproved, then it will come back. Anything that happens in the future will come back here as a matter of course. So there's really not I don't think there's anything to discuss there. Certainly, no retroactive function is going to happen. Nothing would normally come to this Planning Commission with regard to VALCO at this time.
So what you're saying is because we have a contract, you don't want the city to study it anymore?
We not only have a contract, we have an adopted specific plan.
Yes, that's the contract, right? The specific
Well,
plan.
we have a specific plan. The city can write a general plan or a specific plan and change it at its discretion at any time, within the bounds of how many times per year, within those limitations. However, there is also a development agreement there, which is a contract, which vests the terms of that specific plan. So there isn't anything to have a discussion about. So, in this particular case, because of the way it came up, it was included in this list. It's not an appropriate one here, and it's not really an issue, right? If something happens, if nothing happens, then it's a non-issue. And if something happens, and there were to be a change that would cause us to look at a new specific plan for the VALCO zone, that will come here as just a normal part of the process.
So I guess your concern is even if we have this item, there's nothing the council can do about it.
Yeah, I think it would be, of course, you can always have a hearing if you want, but if you try to make a decision that changes anything that exists, I suspect that will be, violation of the terms of the development agreement. So, I wouldn't put it as a recommendation. I wouldn't put something on the list which doesn't appear to be, legally sound.
Why can't we have a study session then on the VALCO project, just to tell people what's going on with Wolf Road and Stevens Creek Boulevard, what the project is, what the status is? Why can't we do that just as an information session?
And study sessions by their nature are never prescriptive. They're just supposed to gather more input or get people to air ideas or more brainstorm. Whether something whether the original agreement will be changed or whether it is legal or not is totally orthogonal to having a study session about something. So I don't see, if it was prescriptive, it was something which the city is expected to act on, then it's altogether different. But purely from a point of view of more greater community engagement, I don't see any problem in having a study session.
I'm curious, in what sense do you brainstorm at that?
Like you want to know how we will brainstorm? Or
No, what's the outcome? I mean, there's an agreement in place, so you're kind of creating some confusion here versus Commissioner Moore talked about a status where things are at. So those are two completely different things from the standpoint of one is what is the current state of the project in terms of timelines and other elements versus are you recommending that we go back and, I don't want to say start from the drawing board, but seek new inputs and new ideas that are more informational because?
Well, I mean, my view on this is that, you know, if there's no interest in it, but since we've talked about it, we can prioritize it accordingly. But I think it's good that people are airing out what each item is, and I think that's an important thing. Study sessions, I believe, and correct me wrong, on the staff side as well as attorney side. Study sessions are there just to, you know, get input and get insight. They're not prescriptive. Is that correct? And they have to be funded as well in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. If you're looking for an informational item, we can certainly bring back something for an informational item under staff report or something like that, right? Director's report. If you're looking for status of a project or status of some kind of study, we can bring that back as an informational item. Usually a study session is looking for, there's some kind of action related to it further down the road, right? That we're studying right now and trying to understand what it is and which direction to go towards.
Okay, so regarding Valco, I do have some confusion about the status of the road widening. It looked like it wasn't approved, and yet it was included in the SB 35 tentative subdivision map approval. So I'd like to know what's going on with that. I'm not sure how to ask for it now. Is that now a staff report informational session? What is that?
The way that traditionally this is done is, I mean, you know, you ask the developer what the status is. I mean, you know, the only thing that's an issue here is I mean, you know, I would be surprised. I don't know. I was driving by the Hyatt, you know, the new hotel that's kind of in the corner by 280. It is not a normal thing that we would have a session to discuss the status of how their project is going. I mean, they have an agreement of what they're supposed to build. They have approved plans. They have inspectors crawling over to make sure that's what they're doing. There isn't any reason to expect anything other than what was agreed to. And that's the same, you know, that would be the same with any project in town.
I believe the final letter did not include the street widening for Wolf, that was not approved. And I think maybe staff could correct me on that.
I would suggest that we just keep it on the agenda, and when we decide to vote, people can decide where they want to prioritize and then take it from there.
Correct. I think we want to avoid talking about specific projects that's not been agendized for today's discussion. So, thank you.
All right, I'll go back to the where we are. Anything that should be merged? Anything other suggestions for things to be removed?
I just had a few questions, clarifications, because I was traveling at the last meeting, and so some of them I wasn't clear on the intent, and so that would help me.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be great if everybody knows what we're voting on,
yeah,
or ranking. It would help.
So let's see. In terms of the internship program, so is this us? Is the thought here we're recommending, or we want to recommend to the city council that there's budget for more interns to accomplish the things listed here? Is that the?
I will turn that over to Commissioner Saxena since you proposed that, and I believe that's kind of in the spirit of what he was thinking.
Yes, the idea is to have a more formal and structured and funded program to get involvement from people who are in advanced level of their studies programs in these things to help the city in some cases, especially on the proactive components, to be able to get the resources, get studies, and get input on matters where they may not have funding. It also is good public responsibility. We want our city to be
Sure.
more actively involved with the universities here and get their expertise and their input into what we're doing. So especially because as a council, there is, or as a planning commission, we have talked about being proactive, and being proactive may not necessarily fit in with the budget of what the city has and so on. So I wanted to get some more heads into the place who can do more researches and those kind of projects to help the city and the staff better in being more proactive about doing things.
So I think that's a great idea. I really don't know how it connects to the Planning Commission necessarily, I guess, other than, because I don't think we would actually have any part in that program or establishing, right? I mean, that's really the city and city staff with city council saying, we want to allocate this much of the city's budget to do this program. But I don't know if it's
It
is that
depends.
something we would?
It depends on how we get structured. I mean, one thing could be that the new interns could form a small team with some planning commissioners who mentor them and help them in terms of what they want to do. It could be in collaboration with the city staff, bend things and take, hey, this is something the commission has talked about, or the city council is talking about, something new. Can you go and research this? And those are the kind of things I'm looking for. And I want to make sure, at least get it proposed to the city council to make sure it gets funding.
So the other thing, I think there's a lot of elements that need to be vetted with regard to any program where you're hiring people, right? So who's vetting the candidates? I don't think we want any type of insinuation of any favoritism associated with any of these candidates. So I think all these details need to be worked out through city legal and those elements in terms of.
Exactly. Right. There are a lot of details which need to be worked out. That's why I especially put it out as an item, because I know it can't be really done in an ad hoc manner. As
right. And we're not qualified as the Planning Commission, I think, to structure that program. So I think our role, you're saying, though, is just recommend it as something we think the city should do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
This is supposed to help the city council prioritize, and this is more like a very horizontal thing which can help in any of those proactive projects.
Okay, compensation policies for proposed ADUs, just a little more on that. It's really short.
I believe that was Commissioner Moore. Go ahead. Oh, no, was yours?
I don't.
Was yours?
It wasn't mine either.
Was that anyone else's? Who put that up?
Is this, my interpretation of this was actually the item that which we had on the agenda and has been deferred a couple times.
Yes.
Correct. So yes.
Change of impact fees.
So the items at all 32 items came from the commissioners, and they went in order of how you proposed them. So
time sequenced, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, time sequence. So I would guesstimate that was either Commissioner Saxena or Commissioner Fong.
Was that you?
Yeah, compensation policies for ADUs. Do you know? Can you elaborate on that?
Okay, to me, it was about the electrical stuff that you're talking about, that as a part of the electrical things, can we ask ADU permits to be tied to at least some PV installations?
Okay, yeah, so I had a big cluster of things which were around, reduction of greenhouse gas.
Right. Okay.
And, there are programs in Palo Alto and Mountain View they've adopted already that do that at different stages. So no greenhouse gas at all electric, that kind of thing. And so if that's the case, I actually would probably wrap that one into, maybe wrap that one into 5. And
yeah, sure. So
just simplify it.
Because it's ADUs are new construction, I think it's a great time to have that thing done.
All right, so let's move item number 3 to 5 and 11.
So just to, and at the end I'll recap, but just for this particular item, we're talking about merging 3, 5, and 11 into one. Correct? Thank you.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think even 4 is sort of related to that, about electricity.
Yeah, I mean,
charging port.
I think in this spirit, when I suggested those, I think that there was different levels of no greenhouse gas, which is you're producing what you use. There is electric, so electric only, and then there's some other things here which are also turn out to be, in general, what things can you do to incentivize people to go to cleaner technologies. So I would agree that those can all be grouped together.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's actually looking like you've got 3, 11, 5, possibly 4, 29, and 6, kind of all falling under the same
Electric charge
umbrella. And then you've got different things that you want to do under that, such as have an informational session on the items related to conservation as the 2020 solar requirement on residential construction approaches. So there's one informational session. You want to have a study on zero net energy incentives. And then guidelines sounds like municipal code changes. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, so in structuring these things, I was looking at, in particular, that there were specific things that were useful time-wise. In particular, the solar requirement for new homes changes in mid-2020. So this is an appropriate time to have an informational, get that out into the community. That's as a subset. I think that the framework, actually, that I was talking about, zero net and greenhouse gas-free or electric, was perhaps trying to get an ad hoc group with sustainability, who also has a couple of these items on their charge, to come up with some sort of recommendation. So that is a little bit longer. Maybe that becomes two different things. There's extreme short, which would be solar, and perhaps the ADU stuff when that comes back around. The ADU impact fees.
Is this something that should go to the Sustainability Commission as a whole, then?
Yeah. As a whole, no, because they actually came to me, one of the Sustainability Commissioners came to me because they were trying to figure out in which way, what was the mechanism through which they can get this into the municipal code. So that's the path. What happens is that they are regularly, given information about, here's an initiative that you should talk about, and the way that they see it is, we'd like to talk about it, but we have no mechanism to actually cause people to do this. So, the kind of thing I was talking about really was, if the outcome of this is, hey, here's information that we provide to the public, just so the people who are most likely to be wanting to purchase these things know about it. So that's a lower level thing, although that actually is that may be high staff impact, which you did note on the in the list.
So just making sure, process question, we are combining 3, 5, 6, 11, 29, and are we missing anything?
What do we get to?
And it sounds like you wanted to split them up into sustainability, short-term and long-term. Is that correct, Commissioner?
That's fine with me. I mean, I think that would help identify, talking about solar in 2020 is something that is a very simple, the granularity is very simple for the council to fund that. And then the separate kind of discussion, which is how do we come up with a bigger plan around sustainability or greenhouse gas reduction, that is something that, they could treat separately. So I think it is probably 2 items.
Okay, sounds like we have 2 items there.
Farmers market. I didn't know what expanding farmers market.
That was put on by staff, if I remember. Oh, maybe I'm incorrect. Maybe I'm wrong.
Outreach meaning advertising, outreach meaning?
I think that was on the original list we were handed.
Which item we're looking at?
Expanding the
9.
farmers market
So,
outreach.
yeah, so
I just mentioned that in passing.
Yeah, so currently we do have outreach, not just from the community development department, but various department as well, to attend farmers market, a variety of different durations. So I think a comment was made by Commissioner Fung to expand that outreach to the Oak Shopping Center, since that's a highly populated.
It was just a minor thing. The staff report mentioned specifically going to the Creekside Park.
Of moving it from the Oaks to Creekside?
No. That the
Addition.
Planning Commission would start doing some tabling along with other city commissions at the Creekside Park Farmers Market. So I just said you should do the Oaks too.
Oh.
It is no more.
So no city commissions are actually out on the farmers market. I'm talking about department. So what this was do is,
Okay.
it's not you guys out there, it's us out there. So what this is, I mean, you're more welcome to go out there as well. I'm happy to see you out there. But so what this is just telling you that community development staff is out there once a month, meeting with the neighbors and talking to the general public. That's what that was, just to let you know what we're doing.
Is that something that the public information officer can handle and have this removed from our list?
I don't think it'd be a problem if we drop it. I mean, it's interesting actually. That one actually does have fiscal impact because the Oaks Farmers Market is on Sundays. So you would actually have to allocate somebody's time.
Yeah.
So we'll just cut it.
Okay. All right.
I had a question. While we were talking about the farmers market, is it okay for us to add or update the way certain of these are structured? Because I know that number 3 didn't really capture what I was trying to say.
Yeah, we can, let's get a revised list and then look at it again and see if the wording is what we wanted, just to make
Yeah,
sure
I mean,
it's
I
correct.
think we'll pick that up in the integration of 3 into the others.
That's a good idea. And Commissioner Takahashi, is there other items that we should clarify as well?
I
And anyone else too, as well?
have some question marks. Let me just make sure
Well,
they're actually.
so I was actually interested in adding one that I'd missed. In the prior year, I'd requested that for our work plan that we put in an item regarding the conversion of traffic impact measurement from
LOS.
LOS to VMT.
Yeah.
And that's something, again, taking place next year. It is significant in terms of how we look at a project
Everything.
approval.
Yep.
So, you know, Ben had picked up a number of last year's leftovers. That one didn't happen to get on there, so I'd actually suggest we add that one on. I think that's actually a pretty major one.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to add anything? I just want to check with our city attorney.
So adding new items is probably outside of the agenda item tonight, since it wasn't noticed to the public. There will be opportunities to amend the work program down the road if you want to table that one for future amendment.
Okay. Any other ones, Commissioner Takahashi?
There's one about study session to address misunderstandings on housing where there is an excess of office development within a project that is identified as a housing project. Develop some multiplier or math to calculate. Is that, I guess my question was, is that a multiplier or math to calculate, is that what the expectation the Planning Commission would actually do? Or I guess that was, that last sentence there to me was, I wasn't sure what that meant.
Okay, so I left this fairly open-ended. So one of the problems that we have is that for office in the county, they accept 1 employee per 300 square feet. And then, you know, if you look at some of the advertising, you'll see that's 3.3 per 1,000 square feet. You'll see up to, 6.2 employees per 1,000 square feet. And then in that advertising, they'll explain how that is, it's a cost savings for the company if they can get more employees in. But the problem you have is you've now effectively doubled the amount of traffic that's going. So there's a couple of issues. It's like, should we be accepting the 300, 1 per 300 in our studies, and then for information purposes, it would be great if people, when they look at a project, are able to, they have the math, they have the multipliers, so that they can make a guesstimate on their own for whether or not it's a balanced jobs and housing project on its own, and then they can reflect back for, well, we've approved this, we approved this, we approved this, this has been built, this hasn't, how are we looking on our own? For instance, I was looking at a project in San Jose, and because we've been working on our own housing issues, I was able to do some math on it and tell that they were going to be essentially worsening the housing shortage, with even though it added housing. And then we also, which I don't see on the list, have kind of a PR problem because of how our largest project was marketed and spoken about in the local news agencies as being housing. And for those of us who really dug into it and saw how much office was being added, we know that it actually is causing a housing shortage. And then you have, on top of just the simple balancing of how much office to housing that one project has, you have the indirect jobs which end up happening, and the support jobs, which, if that office is going to have, people earning $139,000 on average, and their support personnel are going to be making much less, then where will they be housed? And, are these projects going to balance? So it's a huge topic.
Okay.
Actually, that's something which I wanted to talk about, and I'm wondering whether the city staff has some sensitivity analysis to how the addition of new office space contributes to new housing requirements, both from the point of view what is legally required or recommended under the various job to housing creation ratios, or what we would expect if we want all the support staff, or at least not all, but like some percentage of support staff to be living within the community. So do we have those kind of formulas or structures in place?
I think it's called the general plan at this point in time.
We don't have stats or mathematical equations for that configuration, no.
Okay,
Right, so I
thank
think
you.
it goes back to, during the development of the general plan, at least how ours was structured, it was so much office space, so many units, and so much hotel, a very small amount. And so one could assume that somebody did some work and that those were in theory balanced, which they totally weren't. But I think that's what's driving office. I mean, this is now going back 4 years. Right. Commissioner Brophy brought up significant concern over office housing imbalance after the Apple campus was approved.
Yeah, I mean, we've some of these issues, and I think in Palo Alto, they just put office caps recently as well to get to that balance, so they wouldn't contribute to the problem.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay. Any other items?
Actually, I wanted to actually talk a bit about number 35, the improving CST tax revenue.
We can't add items. That's
No, it's
kind of-
already there.
That's not on the original list. This is an ad list.
Oh.
That's not on the list that was sent out to everybody. So
What list are you talking about?
the one here.
The spreadsheet.
What spreadsheet?
What is this? What list is this?
This is the list that was sent out to staff. So just printed out.
So you have a spreadsheet that was provided to us from Commissioner Wong, just kind of itemize the numbers, itemize the items. In our staff report memo, we just use bullet points, right? Just identifying, because we didn't want any perception that items already been itemized. But I think Commissioner Wong had itemized these for your easy discussion and included some of the items that he or you guys may have received in your inbox from the public.
So was this the desk item? I haven't seen it.
This was not the public comment item, if that's what you're referring to earlier.
The written.
It is or is not?
The written.
This was not the
We should be
written
using the
communication
public
earlier.
comment item as the way to do it. There's numbers on there to improve prioritization. And then later on, I found out that the last 4 items, we can't add items. We can only go with the items that we had from the last meeting. So we can't add any additions. He can't end it in general, so.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Chairman.
How did that get distributed?
It was sent over to, you guys all have it.
When did we get this?
It's right here in
Yeah,
front
no.
of you.
Well, I didn't know this is yours or mine. I mean, I've never seen it.
So what you did was take each work program bullet item and ordered them.
I just ordered them. I just
And
took
you
what we had
put
from the
a
agenda,
number-
ordered them, thinking that would
Right.
be an easier way for us to
Okay.
talk about it, to have a number item to look at.
That's what
And
we've been
How did I
doing.
get it? How did I receive it? Was it here on the? Was it supposed to be here on the?
Yes, I passed one out for everybody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
you have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it didn't mysteriously show up. It's-
Yeah, these are all the numbers we've been using.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I numbered them independently from the
Oh, you
from
did?
the
It should
agenda
be,
packet.
We should
Should
all
be
have the same
exact-
order, hopefully.
should be exactly
It's the same order. It's the same
The bullet
order.
points and the numbers are exactly the same.
Well, yeah, except that there are those other points on there, right?
Which are not germane.
Except there are additional
add it.
Yeah,
ones
we're not- yeah.
as notes provided by Commissioner Wong, yes.
Yeah, no, not germane. So. Okay, if there's no other questions, I mean, maybe what we can do is, oh, we do? We have more? Okay.
What was high-density residential guidelines?
That's probably mine.
And also, if the fast-track second-story construction and one-story addition, reduced time it takes to build your own home, I'm just want to hear a little more about what that is.
So item 21, fast track second story construction, one story addition, reduce time it takes to build your home. Was trying to find ways to actually improve the process. Heard a lot of complaints from homeowners when they put into a permit, by the time they get something out. There should be certain things that are templatized that they can easily get through, and any way we can do to reduce that, because the carrying costs are somewhere between 6 to 9 months to get an approval. So what can we do to fast track additions, fast track, second stories, and anything like that for folks that are trying to do that while still making sure we've got the right balance. So I think it was a way to do a study session around that. The second one, high-density residential guidelines, was to think about, what are some features you want in high-density residential, what might be the, residential to retail ratio, office ratio, parking spaces, charging ports. It's just thinking about what happens in a high-density environment, what traffic flow may look like, and what other environmental impacts. It was just trying to get ahead of things in the future as maybe densities increase.
So on the fast tracking, I mean, there is a permit fast track process. However, with second stories, believe me, we'll be seeing some. The sensitivity around second story additions can be very high.
Oh no, understood.
Right?
Oh, it is very high. It's very so.
We tend to only see the ones that cannot be resolved between the applicant and plaintiffs, oftentimes, and so. That's just something we have to be very mindful of with regard to second story additions. Balconies and those are all things that there's a lot of sensitivity to. On the second one, high density residential guidelines, yeah, there's a lot there. That's a huge, and I think a lot of the things you mentioned are all part of assessing that in terms of traffic and every element as far as applicable to city code. So. Not unless is the thought to understand what those guidelines currently look like and whether or not we want to change those guidelines. Just trying to understand.
The original thought was to do a comparative study of what some cities have, from Sunnyvale to Los Altos to Palo Alto, just to get that in place so that we all have some kind of base-like understanding if should that occur.
Okay.
So that one does wrap together with number 1 then.
Yes, let's move them together.
Yeah.
I think
catch.
you did already.
Right. Yeah.
But
I didn't actually, but hopefully they did. Hopefully staff has. So. And then 32, just so people know what that was. 32 was really about trying to get to more neighborhood control in their areas, and kind of it was, some areas of Monte Vista in the hills, they want gates and electric gates because of their conditions. Some people in Rancho have RV parking, and there's been a move by city staff to eliminate that, eliminate the curb outs. And I think the Rancho residents are a little bit unhappy with that. I think there's other things like that. Each neighborhood has kind of its own character and feel that some have been preserved better, if you think about the Eichlers in some of the areas. So I think people are wanting to get more input and some neighborhood feel in their neighborhoods, so to preserve that character. Some people want more trees, some people want less trees, but maybe to get more input in those areas.
May I ask what the mixed-use project standards is covering?
That probably should be rolled up as well into the high density. It's thinking about what happens when you have Rivermark type projects where you have retail, some office, some different levels of housing. So that's kind of the thought process there.
Yeah, I think it's very much tied to 1 or in the same spirit.
So 1, 22, and 31 should be combined, just in case people are keeping track. So making sure we have that. But not 32, correct. Yeah, but not 32.
And another one. 27, review electric scooters, e-bikes, and motorized vehicles.
Yeah, I wanted to get ahead of that issue, something someone proposed, given the fact that we have bike lanes, we will soon have e-bikes and scooters that are electrified. How do they all work with each other? We've got road diets that are not really being used, but the average resident has come back and said, why are my streets being narrowed? It's only going to get worse. But if we've got e-scooters and other folks, also thinking about how they all work together, thinking about bikes, e-scooters, pedestrians, everyone in one spot. So it's about thinking about that policy.
That might be a bike ped commission topic that
Do they get electrification?
Well, electric
Maybe.
bikes.
I think the council took that already, actually. They already have had at least one session on, it was bike share.
Oh, community bike share.
Community bike share?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
So are we taking 27 off then, or
I just suggest vote it down.
vote it down?
If you
Okay.
don't like it.
Okay, because the road diets, it's, yeah. Item 26, did you want to talk about that?
Item 26 was about road diets. So I think it's been wonderful being able to bike around the city. I think the bike paths are amazing. I don't know how the usage affects like the average commuter who's trying to move their kids from point A to point B to point C, and now they've lost the lane. I think people should revisit it. I think any of these types of initiatives should have expiration dates, and to see how usage is and see what the volumes are like, so that they shouldn't necessarily be permanent. They're great experiments. If people are definitely using, we should keep them. If we're saying like a majority of folks actually opposed to it, I think there should be an opportunity for them to come back and look at it. So that's what that was about.
Yeah, this one there's an oddity in the way the commissions are structured, because the Public Works Department, has a lot of activity but doesn't have a
commission,
a commission, equivalent commission. So I'm not sure this one's in scope for us.
They do work on bike dividing. David Silliman staff
Yeah.
to the bike ped.
Right.
And that's generally the intersection.
Yeah.
A road diet discussion would probably be
Yeah.
bike ped from the
I think
standpoint of.
road diet in particular.
Yeah.
Because the bike transportation
Right.
plan is actually what's calling for those changes right now.
Right.
So that may be one that's just similar to the Housing Commission one. It's just not a planning commission item.
I don't know, I kind of think we're relinquishing too much traffic to the Bike Ped Commission, and like Palo Alto, their planning commission is planning and
And
transportation. And we're not talking about transportation while it's one of our also huge problems, housing and transportation. So I'm not sure I would give up everything, especially with the road diets. I think we might want to hold on to that.
Sorry about that. Making sure I don't push a button I shouldn't push. Yes, thank you. Okay, any other questions? All right. I'd like to suggest a process where we have a finalized list. Maybe it can be, I don't know how this works. Should it be roll call? Should it be email? Should we get on the list? Maybe we can read the list that you have, Director of.
So your recommendation has to go to City Council tomorrow as a desk item.
Yes.
So as clear as you can be tonight is best. My fear is that we're not going to have the capacity to do a real-time manipulation of the forms, to email them, present a new form. So I would ask that if I could just go over what you suggest so far and correct me whenever you can, and we can compare notes. And once we have that list, we can either renumber or rephrase that particular item for your voting. So what I've indicated items that you are removing, not merging, removing, are item number 9 on the expansion of farmers market outreach. You're also removing item 27 on the electric scooters. So those have been removed, okay? The ones we're merging, we are merging item 1 with 22 and 31. And for the public, these are numbers to the bullet points that we issued in the staff memo. We're also merging item number 3, 5, 6, 11, 29, and also heard a recommendation splitting them into 2, which we probably won't discuss what that looks like. We're also talked about merging number 8 with number 23. There's also a discussion of merging number 12 with number 18. And also merging number 10 and number 16. And also moving number 30, which is the BMR standard to housing design, to the Housing Commission. So we're moving it from our list with a recommendation to move the item to the Housing Commission.
And I just want to double check, do we move 12 and 18 together as well? Is that on your list? Anyone? You have that?
That was a previous
Yeah.
discussion saying that 12 is the same as 18. So I took that if you say
took
the
18
same
out.
as each
Got
other,
it.
that they're being merged, but we can certainly keep them separate.
I show 10, 16, and 20. Does anyone else have that?
I do as well.
10,
10, 16, and 20.
I got 10 and 16.
Okay.
But you want to merge 20 as well?
Double check that. I've got it written on both of them.
One of them is the permit approval times.
Yeah, so 10 is regarding the violations of condition approval,
Right.
about the penalties. 16 is regarding the application approval time limits. And 20 is the permit approval times, that we should set a time limit.
So do you want
So-
them grouped together?
Let's
or-
group them together if there's
Okay.
no objections.
And then I have a question about item 4, because I show it being grouped with the I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 11, and 29 together. Does anyone else have 4 also grouped in that, or not?
I don't have 4 grouped, but I don't think we discussed that, but they are all infrastructure related. I think that was kind of the spirit, but Commissioner Fung, is that what the intention is?
I'm not sure this was originally mine, but I think that's fine.
I mean, the overall clean energy and zero net.
So 4 goes to where?
We
You've
are
got-
merging 3, 4, 5, 6, 11, and
Okay.
29 and splitting them once we figure out what that
Yep.
looks like. Does that sound right to everybody?
And did I mention merging 6 with 29? No, yes, that's part of the group that you just mentioned. Okay, perfect.
God, I wish we had a whiteboard. So much
May I
easier.
keep going on this list, just to make sure I've got this right? So just starting from 13, 13 and 14 are still there. 15 I have gone. Let's see. I have 16 and 17 have remained the same.
I don't believe 15 has been removed.
Oh.
There was discussion about that being removed. I believe Commissioner maybe Moore or somebody had mentioned
That it
that
would-
it's important to stay on.
Oh.
So I did not remove
So
the item, but we certainly can.
15 staying? Housing diversity. I thought the discussion was that it should go to the Housing Commission.
I believe that was what was suggested. So you want to change that or do you want to keep that?
We don't want to be duplicating. We can just go to their meeting, and then if we're doing the same exact session at both, for both commissions, that seems like that's a waste of.
And Commissioner Takahashi, I guess we can bring that to them in the housing?
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, let's do it.
Oh, actually, so 14, we didn't discuss 14. I think 14 is a non-issue. We actually have a department. Economic development.
No, this has to do with the Economic Development Commission, which started in 1996, and it hasn't been codified. And it's listed as an ad hoc commission, and it was not made by ordinance. So I think that needs to be reviewed and discussed. And then also, because there's like the Heart of Innovation website, which is discussing the Bub Road area, that we need to talk about where they're perhaps veering into zoning issues, which would be something that we need to pull to planning.
Yeah, that heart of the, that Bub Road project is actually part of the EDSP, which was on our regular, that already approved work plan. I mean, that's in the first section of Ben's document.
It should be in the municipal code, the commission that's meeting.
Oh, are
If
you
it's-
talking about the
if-
fact that it's not even listed in municipal code as a commission, where everything else is listed except for the Economic Development Committee? Commission or committee, maybe I'm using the wrong terminology.
Yeah, well, I mean, that one in particular, I mean, that's the city manager's,
Right,
it's
so
administrative.
once or twice a year
prerogative.
meeting.
Yeah, because the members include the city manager, director of community development. There are, a planning commissioner,
I would suggest this needs to go to legal look over, because we've all had our briefings on the Brown Act, and there's some question about that particular commission and how it needs to be formed, especially given that they're, calling it an ad hoc commission, and it's been around for, 20 years. And, I think that.
A long ad hoc commission.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's part of CODOP. Any other things? Interim Director Fu, how are we doing? Got 'em all?
You guys doing great. The next one you want to do is break up 3, 4, 5, 6, 11, 29 into however many categories you want to break that into, or keep it as one.
Commissioner Fung, how would you like to break that? I think you had an idea of the
Well,
long-term, short-term, and
Yeah, so I think we would identify one item, which is 2020 Solar Initiative. And then the remaining parts to be determine a strategy for recommendations on zero net, no GHG, and sustainable practice.
okay, so it sounds like we have two areas, zero net and 2020 solar.
Well, I wanted to make sure that the parking and stuff like having in
Oh,
future
yeah.
developments, having enough ports for everything, all those things are there.
Yeah.
Do you want to call it 2020 and green energy infrastructure?
Yeah, but, well, I think that, I don't know, I would say that at this point, because there's not state regulation related to charging stations, that it's probably appropriate to just put that in with figure out the future plan. It is closer in term than talking about, running your house completely off of solar panels. So I do recognize what you're
Yeah,
saying.
so like if we have new developments coming, we would like to have something which anticipates how many chargers they would need over the next 20 years,
Yeah.
and we fund for it. And everything.
I mean,
What's happening is with the 2020 solar thing, a new home constructed next year will require at least some number of solar panels, right? That change will not have yet, there's not a mandate for electric charging.
Right. So we do review on new projects that are coming in, at least we generally question how many EV charging stations are you planning on installing, where are they, and that. So there is that element of it.
Yeah, if
but
you
there's
can-
not a specific ratio of for every 100 spaces you need X.
Yeah, especially for newer apartments and other mixed-use projects,
Right.
where you'll have a lot of daily commuters or other people. So.
Well, yeah, and or a place where you don't. I mean, that's one of the big issues with EVs right now is if you are in an R1, then that's very straightforward to have home charging. But if you're in an apartment,
Mixed.
it's a big problem.
Yeah, and especially for retail as well. We're starting to see that as well.
Mm-hmm. So I think that puts it in the category of things like, how would you encourage people to have a heat pump? It's the same thing. How would you encourage, how do you encourage an appropriate number of charging stations? I think that probably fits in the longer term one, recognizing that there are things that can be done quicker than others.
Yeah, I mean, I think the residential versus commercial versus apartments, I think that's sort of 2-3 different
Yes.
things. But
It's interesting in Palo Alto, for instance, with their zero net strategy. It is very short term for residential, but very long term. I mean, they have no set date for commercial.
It's wide
So,
open.
and that just reflects, businesses, there's some resistance on the business part of business. But, the whole plan there, the goal really was, how do you start having a discussion about the things that can be, whether it's creating incentives or at least just creating information for people.
I think we've been generally pretty good about all the projects coming through asking and encouraging the utilization and significant content in charging stations, but there's been it's right.
Some
there's-
form of
there's no-
quantification
Yeah,
or-
there's no standard, if you
yeah,
will.
that would help. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, discussions? Sounds like we got a list we can go down, or?
I'm a little confused about number 7, Heart of the City Specific Plan Review. Update sections such as transit corridors in the city and other sections in the city. Other sections in the city sounds like you're talking about something outside of the Heart of the City Specific Plan. And I'm not sure if this shouldn't just be rolled into, I guess you have to keep it separate. I was thinking you could roll it into the general plan, but it's
a specific
plan, so it's sitting separately. So I'd like to know a little bit more why this is here.
Yeah, so this was one of mine. Again, in setting together my list of suggestions, I was looking at things that had very near-term impact. So there's a high probability of there's a high probability of legislation in the, within the next 2 years that might have some effect on things like transit corridors. So in particular, this is one where not only is the Heart of the City a relatively old specific plan, so it doesn't track with current thinking very much. It is also one that's highly likely to be impacted to a much greater extent than than most of the other plans in town. So that's the reason for that.
So the Heart of the City plan update is already on your work program? So are you looking to modify that? Or are you're looking to add a subsection
I think
to that?
the scope was probably the scope that I was intending was different than what was there already. But that when you crack it open, maybe that will turn out to be the same thing. So.
Well, that you did bring up the coming legislation, which we do also have, and one issue from is SB 330, and I don't know what we can do if I'm not really sure what strategies you're thinking about for that specific plan area with regards to the coming legislation, because if SB 330, for example, gets through,
you have no say.
You're out of luck.
Yeah, so I would anticipate that. I would actually anticipate that ahead of time. The bigger change that I would suggest for Heart of the City, and this actually would generally apply, I would pursue in the general plan as well, is that we stop having housing element allocation limits on residential. So right now, the Heart of the City plan is mixed use along the entire corridor, but of course, Alan can attest to this as well. There was a applicant who was the owner of Scandinavian Designs, was interested in building housing, unable to do so because his housing element allocation had been removed. So, I believe the housing element allocation is obsolete, and if we are really interested in trying to hit our housing numbers, then we want to go to the normal model, which is, when there is a specific plan area that carries that land use that they are entitled by right, to the density that is specified in the plan. And that would actually be the update, would be to look at, I believe this is the intent of the very general plan item that was on here. It was to establish, objective and modern standards in the general plan as well as in the specific plan.
Okay, so when we get into the housing allocations, we're back to an entire general plan amendment. So I am unwilling to look at the Heart of the City specific plan review for these purposes. We would need to look at the entire city housing allocations.
Yeah. That's actually part of that's part of the problem, but the normal full-scale general plan amendments have generally been coordinated, related to the housing element, to having to strike a new housing element, right?
Okay, so this specific plan for Heart of the City was enacted by City Council December 4th, 2014, which is also when the 2 million square feet of office went to Valco and their 389 residential units, and we also had an alternative scenario B in that plan. So again, I'm unwilling to look just at the city-specific plan for Heart of the City, I'm sorry. I think if you're gonna look at housing, you need to look at the entire city and what you're planning and what the community wants citywide, not just in this one strip, which is already impacted by Valco, and then we've got the 1,000 units.
Valco's not part of the heart of the city.
Well, actually, heart of the city extends past Valco to Main Street, Cupertino. The map shows it going past there.
It was removed from. It used to be a part of it, and it was removed. That's actually in the.
In the general plan, you have conflicting maps, which is also part of the consistency issue. So you'll see heart of the city in our current general plan in one map ending before Valco, and in another map you'll show it going past there. So we have some inconsistency about that. But it is, because you're looking at the stretch from De Anza to Wolf, it is impacting the same exact area that Valco is. And then you've got, for your freeway access going to Wolf and 280, you've got the Hamptons, should it ever get built, also impacting that same area, and Apple Park. So I think you're really putting a lot on this one section of the city. And I would, again, prefer that we look at
the heart of the
housing
city extends
citywide.
all the way, all the way to Monte Vista as well, right?
So on the Stevens Creek past,
yeah,
past
Stevens
85.
Creek all the way to, to
Heart of the City is 85, De Anza, and Wolf, for those who don't know that, and Stevens Creek. So.
Right. It also identified as a transit. So, this is one of these things where, if you want to have a discussion around setting objective standards, whether you like or don't like the new legislation that's being proposed, you'll have to look at transit corridors, and you have to look at heart of the city.
All right. It sounds like we're going to have a very exciting year, given all the discussion here. Interim Director Fu, where are we? We have a final list now, right?
So
anyone else with any additions to add, deletions, changes? Last call.
If there are no more suggestions, I would recommend a 5-minute break to give us an opportunity to see if we can even turn a new page back to you. If not, then we can
Let's
talk.
do it. Let's do a 10-minute break and come back, and then we'll reorder and get there. When do we do public comments? I just want to make sure we didn't forget that as well.
We can take them now.
Let's take them now while you're doing that, and then, unless you guys want a break, is there a okay. I made the mistake of not eating dinner, so I'm good. Next time I'll know better. But yes, okay, so let's do that. Let's take public comments if they're public comments. I think we have some cards, but I don't know if they were for one card for the dark plan prioritization. Jennifer Griffin. Let's do that by time. I don't think so. She doubled.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Jennifer Griffin, and let me see if I can find my page, which I may have left back there. But I would say right now, I'm not willing and ready to give up part of the city. I spent a good time of my life in the last 15 to 18 years fighting to protect that, and it's over my dead body, okay? I'm sorry. There are things that are hallmarks of Cupertino, and heart of the city is something I am extremely proud of that Cupertino has, and San Jose is trying to take away. San Jose has like a 2-foot setback for their buildings on Stevens Creek Boulevard, and it's getting worse with their urban villages in Stevens Creek Boulevard. Santa Clara is having the same problem with San Jose. San Jose is a big bully. They want the rest of Stevens Creek Boulevard to look like their poor, sad southern half of Stevens Creek Boulevard. Well, I'm sorry. San Jose, they're not quite at 1 million. They just raised an area downtown to 35 feet high. They've got the Diridon area went up another 150 feet, and they're going to be impacting their own San Jose airport, which has started flying to Hawaii. And I don't really feel comfortable having San Jose dictate what happens in Cupertino. They can't annex us. It is not possible. And Sacramento should not be dictating what happens in San Jose or Cupertino. I really happen to like study sessions. I have been asking for a study session on urban villages and their impact on Cupertino for a good nigh 2 to 3 years until urban villages raised their ugly head and became a major problem for the eastern neighborhoods. And yes, heart of the city goes from the San Jose border right by, I don't know, what is that, Lawrence Expressway, all the way down into Monte Vista, and you cannot break it apart. It is an intact document, and we cannot discuss it piecemeal unless we go in and do a general plan amendment. I know a lot of people that spent hours of their life protecting heart of the city. And to me, it is the bastion of what I believe about Cupertino. And I was raised in the county, and I lived in the county for 5 years before we annexed. To me, it is worth fighting for. I don't know what Sacramento cares or knows about heart of the city, but to me, it is something to fight for. It is everything I believe about my city, my life. 35-foot setback. I don't want San Jose's 2-foot setback. I don't know what Santa Clara likes, but it's my city, it's my trees, and yes, if we widen Wolf Road, what happens to the trees down each side? We know they would love to cut them down, but no, we don't pull apart heart of the city unless it goes to the city council. And as far as I'm concerned, it's part of the general plan, and it cannot be pulled out, and I don't care what San Jose thinks about it. If they come across the border, they're going to have to put up a fight for heart of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. We've got Janet Van Zorn again.
Good evening, Commissioners. That's a big job you just went through just now. A couple of comments first about the process. It was impossible for us to follow what was going on because we didn't have a copy of the list. And when I looked it up on my smartphone, I got the copy of the bulleted list, and you guys were talking about numbers all night, and we just could not follow what was going on. So I mention that to you so that maybe in the future, I really respect the fact that you did not want to prioritize the numbers and used bullets for that purpose. That was a really good idea. But then again, where you did have a numbered list and you were referring to all the items by the numbers, we were clueless what you were doing. And if the purpose for publicizing the list is so that the community can have input to the process, then that's something you might want to think about next time. So with that in mind, I really don't even know how to discuss the things that I wanted to discuss. I think that I'll just speak kind of in generalities, and maybe you can just keep in mind some of the things that I see as priorities. First of all, I will fully admit that I'm a person that's taking on one focus and one issue, and you've heard me many times, and you know I'm trying to get 40 units of ELI housing for people with developmental disabilities. How you can handle so many issues, I respect you for that, but I wouldn't be able to do that. After all of what occurred last year with the Valco project, we thought we had those units in the amenities package. Who knows what's going to happen now? So we're not going to give up. We're brainstorming, trying to figure out how to get them in. And one thing I need you to keep in mind is you did mention someplace in all this discussion, inclusionary housing. It's really important to have that addressed, and to have that addressed soon. Because if another project comes along, currently, there is no way that the city can require in any project ELI housing or housing set-asides for people with developmental disabilities. You know that's what I'm pushing for, and that's what I'm trying to get. By the same token, I really think it's important that we have housing at all affordability levels. Those young engineers who come out here for these nice high-tech jobs and can't afford housing, for the teachers, for the firemen, for the, well, you know all the different lists. We need an inclusionary housing ordinance that makes it possible that somehow with all the housing as it comes on board, the city can require that those needs are being met along the way. So I want you to think about that when you're prioritizing what you're doing. And also for all ability levels, all affordability and all ability levels. One other thing, one of the things we're brainstorming about, it will probably not be a big part, but might be a part of us getting some of those units, is the accessory dwelling units issue. And it'd be nice to get that worked out and get it streamlined and come up with a way that there could be some incentive for people to put in units that would help some of the people that we're trying to serve. Also, can I ask one more thing? Also, there's a piece of property here in town that might be some property that could be built upon to make some of the units that we're trying to get. But there's a couple of questions with regard to that property. One is whether or not there's a toxic waste issue, and the other is whether or not there's an air quality issue. And I don't know how those can be addressed, but if they could be addressed up front, it would save a lot of people a lot of time and a lot of money. And I don't know how that happens, so maybe that's something you can think about. And the other thing is that in the State of the City address, trying to help us find ways to create those units was raised. And it was at a really high priority on Stephen Scharf's list, and also in the City Council's prioritization process that they had on a Saturday a few weeks ago. It was very high on the list. Thank you very much for your time and for all the work you're doing.
Quick question, and just what's the address in question that you're talking about, just so we know?
It's a section of land near on Mary Avenue.
You're talking about the city property that's adjacent to the dog park. Is that correct?
Yes, between the dog park
and the
Oaks.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Just so everybody knows what it is.
But, you know, I'm not sure if it's going to work or not. It's being looked at, and we're exploring all
No, it's good to know. I
avenues.
just wanted to get that so everybody knew where it was. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, thank you very much, and good luck with making those prioritizations.
This will be fun. Okay, we're closed on comments, official comments. Do we still need to take a break? Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break and come back at 9:52. 9:52. back from break. Thank you for waiting.
So on the overhead, it's you see it's a pretty rudimentary list. I apologize for the, but at least we got it on one page. It's very small font. I just really want to get everything on one page. Highlighted sections are being merged. You see the cross-out sections and items are being removed. Turns down to 32 items down to 18. So now commissioners, it's now your job to prioritize the 18 items.
This number 3, was that intended to be that solar?
Yeah, so 3 and 4 are the combination. I just didn't have time to split into 2 and reword. If you trust the staff to do that tonight at midnight, and I'll go ahead and do that for
We trust you.
publication tomorrow.
I'll take it. I'm the one that's got to fly out of here. I thought this was going to be easy. Just kidding. No, I thank everybody for waiting and getting through this. What's the process? We'll think about it. We'll take 2-3 minutes to figure out how we want to prioritize these, and then just give you the prioritization in our order. That may be the easiest, and just go down the line.
There's no precedent, so whatever you guys want to do.
How about this? Everybody take some time and order these in the order that you think is important, and then we'll read them out loud to Interim Director Phil. Does that work? So for example, let's say my order was 10, 13, 15, 5, 3, for example, and I'll just read them out that way, and that's the order for me. And then you get the...
It's almost like we're filling up a spreadsheet with our priorities, and we just add them up, and then whatever tends we feed are the...
So the lowest,
Let's get that straight.
the least one.
Which one wins? Lowest? Yes, it's lowest.
So
Most important or least important? And is 18 most important or least important?
18 is least, 1 is most. Let's go.
So just so I'm clear before we start, so 1 is most important,
Yes.
right? And as each commissioner lay out the numbers, for example, item number 1, I give it an 18, for example. I will write that down, Commissioner Takahashi, number 1, 18. And at the end, I'll add them up and put them into the priority list. Got it.
Where the lowest aggregate score.
Correct.
at the
We'll be on
top,
top.
yes.
Correct.
I need Jeopardy music for this. For those watching on TV, we are prioritizing our lists, just in case you're wondering what we're doing. Your sound is working, and it's not on mute, just letting you guys know. Just checking in with everyone. Everyone good on time or still need a little bit more? Okay.
I do have a question about what's showing up as item 12, which had been item 19 on our original list. Yeah, I had it actually completely crossed off. Yeah, I thought it was actually combined and put and sent to the Housing Commission, so I'm not sure about that one.
No, item 12, the new list, item 12, which is add teacher housing, is previously item 19. We did not decide on whether to cross it out or not.
Yeah, that one was left alone.
I have a list final, so I can go. Yeah. But I'm still a ways out.
For those watching TV again, we are still doing our lists. Be silent for a few more minutes as everybody comes up with their prioritization. Point of order, do we do this? We then just go down the list and rank ours? Is that kind of how we do it? Is that how we're going to do that?
So what I was thinking that we could do is you can just go down, who wants to go first. Doesn't matter who can go first. I will write down your ranking. For example, number 1. You don't have to say number 1. You can just go down. You can say 5, 7, 8, 12, 14.
Perfect.
I'll write them all down for each commissioner, right? And I'll add up those numbers for each item, right? Each item will have a total number. The least number that an item can get will be 5 points, right? If you prioritize them all as 1. The most item will be prioritized would be 90, right? It's 18 times 5.
Correct.
So based on that, I will prioritize a new list. Now, in the event it could be a tie. In the event there's a tie, then there'll be a tie.
Okay, just bring it up then. Okay, perfect.
Did the city council have their ordering, their priorities for goal setting made public like this?
Yeah.
The goal setting, the goal setting.
For each of their individual votes?
Yes.
But they gave the total. I was just wondering if each individual council member's vote was made public, like we're talking about doing here.
Those were published.
I think they were. I'm not sure though. So
There was some discussion around the scoring that was used because it was inconsistent across the.
make sure you have 18. So. All right, just checking a status. How's everyone doing?
Just about.
Okay. Does anybody know when the Cherry Blossom Festival is? Since we're just buying time here. Anyone know? Look that up. We were thinking about putting Jeopardy music on, so yes.
Something's not right here.
Yeah, while we're adding these numbers, I do thank everybody. This is a much longer meeting than everyone expected, and hopefully this gets to City Council in time. So thank you to staff and to the City Attorney and to everybody here.
Ben, you'll make sure we're not voting at the same level again, because I might not have missed.
Commissioner Saxena, can you turn your mic?
Yeah, like, once we go through our order, let's make sure that we don't end up repeating a number or something, because we might have made a mistake.
I'll repeat your number before I finalize it and move on to the next commissioner.
Okay.
How about that?
Yeah. So I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss one.
I'm missing one, but I
As long as you follow the list that are on the screen right now, you should be okay.
Yeah.
Actually, it's going to be interesting too. I've noticed that two different styles of approach. One is to align the number with the priority, and the other one is to just align the priority and in rank order. So I think, I think you and I have a different approach. I just basically went down.
Oh.
So, which way would you like it, Interim Director Fu? Do you want our order based on the number that's there, or do you want us to give you the order based on the list that's here?
Whatever you think it's easy for staff to note the numbers you've given me and make that connection with the direct item, that's good for me.
So you have a spreadsheet you're filling right now, or are you going to be taking?
I have what you're looking at right now. We're looking at the same thing. That's all I got at the moment. So I will put that in a spreadsheet later on. I'm not going to be able to do that right now. So.
Okay, cool.
There's two ways. One is just to go, everybody go through them. You got to keep track of all of them, and it's.
I will suggest for
Or you could go number one and then just go each guy
Yes.
with their.
I will suggest that for the sake of time and
So you're talking about item number one.
Yes.
correct.
What is your?
What is your priority for item
Correct.
number one?
Okay, that's the way you want to do
Another
it.
way.
Okay. Let's agree on doing it that way. It's the easiest for Ben to keep track.
Yeah, 'cause then you just boom, boom, boom.
And then just
right-
boom, boom,
right
boom.
across.
All right, so let's.
I think it's
You
also
know if you didn't do it right.
I think that's also easier for the public to keep track as well.
Yes,
Right. Since
and it's
we have
also easier
items
for the
on our
public to see
podium.
where we are.
You don't have
So for our wonderful public members who have withstood this meeting with us, thank you. All right, are
Or
we
watch
good,
it
everybody? Almost. You good?
Yeah.
You good? Are you good? You'll find the one that's missing.
I found the one. I found the one that's missing, and I could, in theory, reorder the remaining ones, but I'm not going to.
That's
That's
not-
what I got. It's like,
It wasn't that important then.
Well, I don't know. I could do it, but I'm not going to.
All right, so Ben, I guess you'll call the number and then we'll just go down the line.
Yeah.
And that's probably easiest. And when that happens.
Sure. So what Chairperson Wong has suggested is I will call item number one, Commissioner Takahashi, Commissioner Saxena. You go down the line and tell me what you gave me. How about that?
Yeah, let's do it that way. It'll be the easiest for you.
Or you can go, one commissioner go all the way top.
Or
to
you can
bottom.
do it that way.
No. Don't,
Whatever you guys want to do. I'm ready to write.
I'd prefer you went each commissioner
Okay.
top down, and that way we're not
And the public will
comparing
figure out what we're doing as well. It's
directly.
easier.
Yeah.
So.
You actually, that's a check that you didn't have two 11s, for instance.
All right, let's go. What's
Which
the
I-
over and under
you
if
know,
I'll make the
I'm
San
aware
Jose
of.
flight? No, just kidding. No, we shouldn't speed the process because of that. Okay.
So
Commissioner
how are
Moore,
we
you
doing this
good?
again?
I prefer to go each commissioner separately, so I would go one, give you the number, two, give you
Okay.
the, okay?
All right. Who wants to go first?
All right, Commissioner Moore, go ahead.
Okay. 1, 8, 2, 15, 3,
Hold
6.
on. Hold on. 1, 8, 2, 15,
3, 6,
3, 6,
4, 12,
4, 12,
5, 18,
5, 18,
6, 16,
6, 16,
7, 4,
7, 4,
8, 3,
8, 3,
9, 9,
9, 9,
10, 7,
10, 7,
11, 10,
11, 10,
12, 3,
12, 3,
13, 17,
13, 17,
14, 2,
14, 2,
15, 1,
15, 1,
16, 11,
16, 11,
17, 5,
17, 5,
18, 13.
Bingo.
18, 13. So, since it's the first one that we're doing, I'm just going to go down the list. If you just follow with me. I got 8, 15, 6, 12, 18, 16, 4, 3, 9, 7, 10, 3, 17, 2, 1, 11, 5, and 13. Thank you. Next.
That would be me then.
Go for it.
Number 12 is 3.
Ready.
All right. Are you ready?
Commissioner Fong?
Yes.
Ready.
So this is for
Item 1.
item 1, my rank. That's the way you want this, right?
Yes.
Okay. So 1 is 6,
1 is 6,
2 is 18,
18,
3 is 1,
1,
4 is 2,
2,
5 is 3, 6 is 8,
8,
7 is 12,
12,
8 is 4,
4,
9 is 16,
16,
10 is 7,
10 is 7,
11 is 17,
17,
12 is 5,
5,
13 is 13,
13,
14 is 10,
10,
15 is 9,
9,
16 is 15,
15,
17 is 11,
11.
and 18 is 14.
Got it. Next.
1 is 6, 2 is 10,
10,
3 is 11,
11,
4 is 7,
7,
5 is 12,
12,
6 is 5,
5,
7 is 2,
2,
8 is 1,
1,
9 is 13,
13,
10 is 14,
14,
11 is 15,
15,
12 is 9,
9,
13 is 8,
8,
14 is 16,
16,
15 is 17,
17,
16 is 18,
18,
17 is 3,
3,
and 18 is 4.
4. Okay.
Okay, I'll go next. 1 is 1, 2 is 9, 3 is 14, 4 is 4.
Oh.
Okay.
I have to write them down. So,
Okay, I'm
so
sorry.
let's start
I'll
over. Number
again.
1 is 1.
1 is 1, 2 is 9,
2 is 9,
3 is 14,
14,
4 is 4,
4,
5 is 13,
13,
6 is 12,
12,
7 is 3,
3,
8 is 2,
2,
9 is 10,
10,
10 is 15,
15,
11 is 8,
8,
12 is 11,
11,
13 is 8,
8.
14 is 5,
Sorry, you have 2 8s there.
13 is 18, sorry.
13 is 18.
Yes.
Okay. 14,
14 is 5,
5,
15 is 2,
2,
16 is 16,
16,
17 is 7,
7,
18 is 17.
17. Okay.
Ready?
Ready.
All right.
1 is 2,
2,
2 is 18,
18,
3 is 5,
5,
4 is 1,
1,
5 is 7,
7,
6 is 15,
15,
7 is 8,
8,
8 is 3,
3,
9 is 4,
4,
10 is 11,
11,
11 is 9,
9,
12 is 6,
6,
13 is 17, 14 is 14,
14,
15 is 10,
10,
16 is 16,
16,
17 is 13,
13,
18 is 12.
12. Thank you, and I'll do some real quick math. Commissioner Moore.
I have 2 3s. You guys did not notice that. I believe I have 2 3s. I think I
You
have.
do have 2 3s. Number 8
I'm-
and number 12.
And I'm missing 13, so it went off the side of my screen.
I think your 13 is 18, no?
Oh, 13, okay, so I have the 13. What am I missing? I have 8 as 3, correct? 1, 2. 2 is 14. 14 is 2.
You're missing 14.
Ah, okay. So the 2 3s that I have are 12 and 8.
Correct.
So unfortunately, I'm going to have to make one of those a 14.
Okay.
Ow.
Well, you don't have
You
to.
can redo
You
it.
can shuffle everything.
Yeah, you can redo.
Redo the whole stack?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're quite a bit different. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have 1 is 8, correct?
Yeah, 1 is 8. Since we're doing this, can anyone else go by your list again, make sure we don't double count or undercount? Thank you.
I think I'm going to have to make the 12 the 14.
Make the 12. You mean make item number 4, 14.
What are my 2 3s?
Oh, you're gonna make, oh, got it.
It's 8 and 12, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
so number 12 is gonna be 14?
Right, because
Okay.
that's a listing.
And
Okay,
number 8
done.
is 3.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So do we wait for the tally, or do we, I guess we should. Okay. So over and under on, no. It's gonna be
Where's your
int-
San Francisco flight?
San Jose,
Right, but you said your last chance was San Francisco flight.
buy on the fly, yeah. So it'll be fun.
I thought you said 10 o'clock San Jose.
It is 10 o'clock San Jose. I can make that
That's the boarding time or departure time?
departure time. It's been done.
Yeah.
It's
You
been
might be
done.
able to make it, assuming we end
He
in
has
like less than 5
5
minutes.
minutes. Yeah. Like if it's TSA pre, which probably he is, right? So you just walk through.
I'm not
there's
TSA
no-
pre,
there's no line.
but there's no
There's
line
no
at this
security
hour.
line.
Actually,
It's just when
I
they
don't know
close
if you
the
want to pick
door,
up,
Yeah.
right?
do staffing. Well, you can't do a staff report.
We can't do staff report,
Yeah, I have a long thing I wanted to talk about after this item, so.
yeah. Oh, okay. That's fine. I will excuse myself and then hand it over to Commissioner Saxena.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Saxena.
Yeah.
I should do that actually, since we were doing the voting.
I mean, the results are the results. It's,
Yeah.
I don't, you should just give yourself some time.
All right.
To look at it, 'cause, right, nothing's gonna change. We've all established our priorities. Unless you're gonna change your mind.
I've not changed my mind.
Let us know if you make it.
You'll read about it. I'm sure.
Your wife's waiting outside now?
No, I think I'm just gonna drive to the airport.
Oh,
Just go.
okay.
It's probably easier. Yeah, she's
Leave
not-
your car at departures.
Pretty much.
Pick it up in the tow yard.
Pretty much.
Okay. Guess it's a little hard to.
So just report the numbers really fast before I reorganize them. Number 1 has a total number of 18. Number 2 has a total number of 70. Number 3 has a total score of 37. Number 4 is 25. Number 5 is 53. Number 6 is 56. Number 7 is 29. Yes. Number 8 is 13. Number 9 is 52. Number 10 is 54. Number 11 is 59. Number 12 is 45. Number 13 is 73. 14 is 47. 15 is 39. 16 is 71. 17 is 39. And 18 is 60.
What was everyone's vote on number 1? If you could just go down the line quickly. Oh, you closed your,
6. Oh, sorry, go now.
2.
1.
Oh, you're 23.
23. Oh, okay.
23. No, it's 23.
Okay.
No one's 23.
Yeah, I got 23 as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, can I get a read back on 15 and 16? Items 15 and 16, what their totals were?
15 is 39. 16 is 71.
One.
And then,
Yeah.
let's see, I'm trying to think how we can get the actual list. to make
Yes, so I'm
sure-
working on that now. I'm just reporting those numbers to you.
Oh,
while
no,
you-
that's
while
not
you-
what I mean. I mean the list of what it was that we voted on. That's actually something that, it's what's sitting on the screen. That sheet is actually pretty important, because.
You want me to read back the lists on the
No,
screen?
no. You don't need to read it.
Uh-huh.
We need to, it would be great to send it.
It'd be good to send the final results of who voted for what and what the tally is. Is that
I
you
guess,
want to do?
I guess,
The items, what
The
the
items.
items, the numbers are.
Well, actually, I believe
just wanna
that
produce it in the.
the outcome should be that the list is reordered and then someone makes a motion and
Okay.
the list is approved.
Right, so I'm trying to reorder that right now.
Okay.
And when I reorder that, I'll tell you, for example, item number 1 is now number 5, for example. If you just give me one more second.
Do we have some with the same total?
There are
Yeah,
probably
the
2 items.
29s.
2
There's-
items.
Yeah, which is possible. I mean, with 5 different numbers.
We get the tie.
So, okay.
I am going to excuse myself at the moment. I will assume I'll hand this over to Vice Chair Saxena
Thank
will
you,
assume
Chairman.
chairmanship, and I will watch the rest on the way.
Have a safe trip.
Thank you.
Oh. Oh, yeah, that was something else I had written on the page.
So lowest is 52, the lowest you get in.
Number 2?
I was just ordering the scores. It seems
I have number 1, yes. Well, what was number, the
Yeah.
18, right?
yeah.
Sorry,
So
number
it's
1 is 23.
Oh,
Number
23.
spoke. Number 1 is 23.
Oh, it's 23.
Yeah, but it doesn't change the
Right,
rank.
number 1 is number 8. That's
Yeah.
what I have.
Number 8,
Yeah.
number 1,
Yep.
number 4.
Number
number-
7,
I have number 3.
29. I have 29.
Oh, yes, yes, yeah, that's true.
And then number 5 is number 3.
Number 5 is 53? Or
Number 3.
in number
37.
Yeah,
Score
yeah,
37.
yeah, not number
And
3.
number 6, I've got a tie between 15 and 17. At
Yeah,
39
at
points.
39 spots, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was just on to number 8,
Which
which
is,
is going to be the next number above 39.
which is 45.
45.
45, yeah.
So that's number 9, because 15 was
8.
a tie.
No, I think 7 was a tie. Or
6 was a tie.
Okay,
7, so
seven,
you're right,
yeah.
it's 8.
Mhm.
It's 8.
And then 47
47 is number 9.
and 52.
Yep, that's number 10.
So the cutoff was 52, I think.
Cut off.
What,
To
what
top
made it
10.
top
You
10?
want
Oh.
top 10.
So, let's see how good or bad was. 52 is average score of 10, which is pretty close, you know, because that's the 10th
Well,
score.
you wouldn't expect this to be a random distribution, though.
Well, I think we have like if you have like 13s and 14s, there were a bunch of stuff where we had good agreement on. 'Cause that means it was in the top 2, 3 of everybody.
No.
We can
There's
list
no
them all.
reason not
Just
to turn the entire list.
Yeah, you could just list them all. But just
If I were the council, I probably wouldn't bother to look past, you know, you kind of look at what it is and see whether it makes sense.
12. What's taking them so long?
Time for you to do the variance
Yeah.
and see if it's, how many peaks.
Great. My correlation's actually not too bad to the.
Yeah, to the final one.
That was wasn't way out there on too many of them.
I think number 3 is what everybody wanted.
See, number 3, I said was 5. And boom. And 2, number 2. Number 1 is 2. I said 2.
I said 1 is 1, so it was 2. Oh, my 1 and 2 were just switched. Wow, that was close.
Let's see, the worst variance I have is, there's 4. 6. 6.
My 9, my 10 actually was 10, so that's a perfect
6.
match
The most I'm away is 6 from the,
from the top 10.
yeah, just across the board. Excel would be really handy right
I
now.
was really saying, we could have just entered it and be done with it and not.
I didn't think I was any way I could keep up, otherwise I would have done it.
So this is old business, then we have new business, staff and commission reports.
So you have to run the vote for
For approval of
Yeah.
this, yeah.
Oh, down here. Oh, yeah. People to read the roll
Yeah.
of the day.
Could we get a commissioner to read your item number 11 back to us again, please?
I'm 10.
9.
I'm 8.
Yep.
17.
Okay.
And you're missing one data point.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can do that. Yeah, you said you're right.
And I'm sorry, same thing for item number 13, please.
17?
Okay.
18.
13.
17.
Okay. So yeah.
Okay.
All right. So we have triple checked. Here's the result. Item number 1 with a score 23 is now going to be item number 2. Okay. Item number 2 with a score 70 will now be number 16.
So far, so good.
Item number 3 with a score 37 will be number 5. Item number 4 with a score 26 will be number 3. Item number 5 with a score 53 will be number 11. Number 6 with a score of 56 will be number 13. Number 7 with a score 29 will be number 4. Number 8 with a score 13 will be the new number 1. Number 9 with a score 52 will be number 10. And number 10 with a score 54 will be number 12. Number 11 with a score 59 will be 14. Number 12 with a score 45 will be 8. Number 13 with a score 73 will be number 17. Number 14 with a score 47 will be number 9. Number 15 with a score 39 will be number 6. Number 16 with a score 76
I
will
had 71 last time. Did did I get that wrong?
I have 71 also.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said that was 71.
Also backtracking, I have a tie. Does anyone else have two?
So let me finish the list real fast. So
Okay.
number 17 with a score of 39 will be number 6.
And that's tied with number 4.
And number 18 with a score of 60 will be number 15. So you have item 15 and 17 tied as number 6. And then
Yes. I just had the number 13 as interchanged with number.
So for number 16, I heard someone was saying how it was 71.
Yes.
I may have misspoke. It's 76. So
Okay.
counting all the numbers, 76.
And what was the rank of that one then?
That
16.
one is 18.
Okay.
That's last. Okay.
So can we give City Council our 6-7 tie, just as it is, and we don't have to run that off or anything, just tell them it's a
6,
tie.
7, go 6, 7, and then 9,
Okay. So
right?
so for the two
6,
are
7.
tied at 6.
6, that's right, you're right. 6,
And then
there's no
8.
7, and then you go to 8.
Right. 6, 8. Right. Which is what I have.
Yeah.
Right. Got it.
We're going to say 6/7.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just have 2 6s and then number 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do, Ben.
Okay, so if someone's prepared to make a motion, I think the best way to do this would be to read the items in the list on your screen with the new, in the order of new ranking, if that makes sense.
Who's up for that?
David.
No way I'm doing that.
I'll do that. Okay. So are we saying that I move that we approve this listing?
You sure you don't want to save this page, resort this page into the final, and then have us approve that as written?
Sure. If you don't take another 10-minute break, I can do that right away. It's up to you. No, I'm not joking.
No, I
do
think
that.
that's actually going to be a better way
Okay,
to do it.
great.
It would be very hard to.
Because there's an IQ test worked into this particular meeting.
Yeah, I think the spreadsheet would have really helped.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, if I had the individual, I'm sure we could do this faster with starting with a spreadsheet now with the raw.
Yeah. I mean, we could have used the Google Doc just for the voting and then taken it off. We could
Yeah.
just upload it, put it down,
Yeah.
and come back.
But you have to log into the Google Doc to
Yeah, actually, you can make it even.
make
I
a
mean, they
bunch
could
of.
just share it with our personal emails or whatever we have, because it's just a voting mechanism. It's not anything. Like,
Well, Ben, number them, add a new number at the first, and then resort those by that number.
Vice Chair Saxena, we're ready if you will call off the break and resume the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners, for waiting while we got the numbers. And can you project the new document? Yes. So can we now have a motion for support of approving these?
Lost it. Have you been able to?
Is there a reason that's
I don't know. Something didn't seem right, but I can't cross-check it back to where it was, so I'm fine. All right, well, does everyone make a motion?
Okay, I'm going to propose a motion to approve the wordings and the order in which we have come up with this.
You need a second.
I second.
We go to vote.
I think you have to state the question.
Seth, you asked us to do something again, or?
Typically, there's the motion, and then the second to the motion, and then state the question for the vote.
Okay. So the question is to approve the text and the order in which these line items have been proposed for the Planning Commission work program for financial year 2019-2020. Thank you. Okay, he's going to abstain, yeah. Okay, so we have 4 yeses and 1 abstain. The motion passes. Thank you. Now we move on to the next items. Do we have any new business, commissioners?
There's no new business on the agenda.
The next item, staff and commission reports.
No staff reports.
Takahashi, you mentioned that you wanted to talk about something.
It was a joke.
All right. I just wanted to make sure you had your chance. Okay.
So I have a commission report.
Okay.
Okay, and part of it's going to include the Planning Commissioners Academy, because we need to report on that. Okay, so the meetings I have attended, February 28th, I attended the Lehigh Cement Public Informational Meeting. It is online now on the YouTube channel, and I learned that they are burning petroleum coke there. If you have a complaint about Lehigh, call the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Pollution Hotline. That's 800-334-ODOR or 6367. I attended the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce LAC meeting on March 1st, 2019. It had a guest, Senator Jim Bell. He spoke about affordable housing and various legislation for financing it, public transportation, mental health services, and the Transportation Committee will be looking at options for high-speed rail on March 26th. There was also a VTA presentation at that meeting, and the Cupertino, City of Cupertino's Roger Lee, is our acting Public Works Director, spoke about a proposed storm drain fees, and he gave a presentation. I went to ROCANA's public charge meeting in Fremont on March 2nd, and there is a proposed rule change to the federal public charge definition. The concern is that immigrant families will disenroll and be afraid to seek programs that they need. They encourage people to apply for citizenship and to stay enrolled, and let them know that the proposal is not final. On March 6th through 8th, I attended the Planning Commissioners Academy in Long Beach by the League of California Cities. The League of California Cities supports local control. The classes are selected from a list, and the ones that I took were ethics training, Build a Better Block, Planning Commission 101, the nuts and bolts of planning, CEQA course, and CEQA Beyond the Basics. I want to mention that one. Because I went up and asked a question, I got to have this book from PlaceWorks. It's hot off the presses, and 2019, it is $8 online if you go to the PlaceWorks website, and I recommend it for anybody who wants to understand the CEQA process, and it's only about 46 pages, and it's really good. So CEQA Beyond the Basics, this was the first time they offered an advanced class. Then Understanding Density and Development Intensity, which was really interesting. These slide decks are online for the League of California Cities if you want to see exactly what we were shown. But in the Density and Development Intensity class, they showed different pictures of developments and would say what density they were. And what was really interesting is they had a 55 dwelling unit per acre project in Livermore, and it was only about 4 stories tall. So that was really enlightening. And the class called What Happens Before Project Approval, Making Findings That Stand Legal Challenge, What Planners Need to Know About City Finance Today, and Legislative Action, which went over several of the 200 new housing bills which are in the works for this year, and they ended with emergency preparedness. I attended an information session by the head of Livable California on CASA, March 10th. Tomorrow night, I believe the City Council will be going over CASA. And I attended the Housing Commission meeting on March 10th, where they set the CDBG funding allocations and did their work program, which is going to council tomorrow. And I emailed the Housing Commission the notes from the Development Density and Intensity class and the Legislative Action lessons from the PC Academy. Actually, it went to Carrie, who sent it to the commissioners. And I went to Home Sweet CASA, Tackling the Regional Housing Crisis, March 14th. That was a pro-CASA meeting held in Palo Alto. And then I returned to Palo Alto on the 17th and to watch the CASA forum, and they had slides of what can be built from SB 50, which was kind of scary to see how much density could be built next to single-family homes based on their proximity to bus lines which have a certain frequency. So I'm looking forward to seeing the CASA presentation to the city tomorrow night, and that's what I've been doing.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. That was very comprehensive. Does any other commissioner have something?
Yeah, I attended a few things as well. Actually, a number of the same ones. The Lehigh Community Meeting, the Chamber LAC, and the Planning Commissioners Academy as well. I'm wondering now, as we are in this section, you know, we have often advanced things that weren't on the agenda here, so maybe I'll mention that it would be interesting at a future point for staff to take a look at informational session with regard to the change from level of service to vehicle miles traveled. I realize that that may not, integrate with the long process we went through tonight, but I do think that that's something that would be of high value to the commission. And that's it.
Commissioner Takahashi, anything else? Okay. I don't have anything else to add, so we're going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, I'm from Blue Hood Stone Barns. We brought a meal for you, and I'm here to serve it to you.
Okay, great. Come in.